Okay. That's just for monitoring. Okay. Like sit down correctly. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, as a heads up, like language, everything is okay. Like I'm not really. I mean, you know me. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I say retarded a lot and like other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Am I
if
allowed
you
to be myself, or should I be more refined?
you can be yourself, that's fine.
Okay.
But yeah, basically just. I guess my plan is, so to speak, like just to touch on like the Ayurveda subjects a little bit, and then we can just go freeform. Just talk
Yep.
about like
I'll
you
tell you
know
what I know.
we can talk about Mr. Girl a little bit, Dr. K, whatever. Like just as if it's a Discord call, essentially. Like
Okay.
that's it.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. So do you want to introduce yourself first, or
Sure. I'm Charlie, social worker. Like to do weird stuff on Mr. Girl server. It's pretty fun.
okay, cool. So I guess first off, like how we met. We met on the Mr. Girl server to basically surrounding the Dr. K stuff. And this all started out with the whole discussion of is it ethical to basically have therapy sessions on stream? Are those therapy sessions that Dr. K does and stuff? And then we just kept talking about like therapy stuff and like your insights on the job, what I think as a lay person, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of explore the Ayurveda subject because, like, for background, lately, my friend Elwood and myself, we're basically looking into Ayurveda, what exactly it is, and how widespread it is, if there is a lot of scientific backing behind it, and yeah, we're basically trying to get like more insights to if stuff like that is applicable, if it can be dangerous, if it can be good, like in therapy and medicine. And yeah, and I guess I would like to know, when it comes to the whole Eastern perspective or the Western perspective and stuff. Like, do you think there is a split between how Westerners approach mental health, physical health, and how Easterners kind of approach mental and physical health? Like, is there like a
Well,
split?
I was just thinking as you're telling me that. I don't know because I honestly have never spoken to anyone like in the current day Eastern continent.
Yeah.
I'm just off perceptions of like older stuff like the Taoism and stuff like that I've read of like it's more of historical stuff. It does seem different. So, I mean, there's a much more incorporation of just your body, mindfulness. It's like the incorporation of your whole being. Where psychology, I feel like in the West has been mostly focused on the mind.
And one thing that, for instance, a lot of Ayurvedic kind of doctors and I guess ideologues like always talk about is that in the West we never really focus about like we never really see the mind and the body as we see them as separate. We don't see them as a unified thing. And did you have like the perception of like when you like went into social work that because you were mostly working with a mind that the bodily like kind of things are kind of neglected?
Um, yeah, I guess in a sense. Like, let me think for a sec.
Hmm.
I guess it's just over time as you work with people, and honestly, you work with yourself. So, as a therapist, I've been to therapy several times. I think I've spoken to you about that before. So, you get the experience of what it's like to, and you can introspect in that own way, and you that way as well. So, the emotional stuff is just you realize how much of it is a body sensation. I guess is what I'm trying to say, and you have to deal with that. So, when you've had like trauma as a child, your body gets used to certain sensations that we think of as emotions. So certain pathways become overactive, and that continues to happen. And so if you're going to repair something like that, you can't. It's not just all in the mind. It's not just like a story that you have wrong. That's useful, and we should do that in therapy, like creating a narrative for your trauma. But you also have to do something in the body. The research like very clearly says this, that if you don't do that other element, it's just not really going to work in the same level as it is if we use some better incorporation of breathing, mindfulness, things like that to incorporate your body and the way your actual body feels is in connection with to your thoughts. If you don't do them in conjuncture, they don't necessarily work as well, I guess.
And you also told me that, like, in discussion, that therapy, like, we basically have this like perception of therapy where, you know, you lay on a weird on a weird stretcher,
Yeah,
or
and I
like
don't look at
on
you, and I'm just like a robot that responds in certain ways.
you have a little notepad, and then when I feel sad, you write down, he is very sad. But you also said that basically therapy, it can be fucking anything. Like basically it can be
I mean, it can't be anything, but there is a broad spectrum of therapy. It can look entirely different depending on the modality and the clients that you're working with. So, like with kids, I've worked in schools for 10 years. You do play therapy or Santray therapy, where like Santray is you have Santray, you have all these little figurines and stuff, and because little kids they can't like communicate like you can as an adult, so you can't really do talk therapy with them. 'Cause they don't understand the concepts that you're talking about. So you play with them, and so the Santray they just like you just let them play, and for some reason the theory is that that's how they're able to communicate, and they can kind of have the same therapeutic result through play when you play with them as opposed to when you try to talk to an adult.
and that makes sense because like children, I guess they're like way more active. So if you play with them,
Which is that
it's
they're the developmental stage. That's how they're learning and communicating. So you have to go to their level. You can't interact with them like they're fucking like a 25-year-old adult. They're a little kid. Their world's so different.
what do you exactly do, which maybe people might think like might not have like the idea of like what do you think do you do that kind of goes against the grain of like what people think therapy is?
Well, I don't tell anyone what to do. Almost ever. Um, I use my own emotions. So if I feel something strongly, like if I'm talking to you, and usually like let's say you and I have therapy weekly, and usually like we're having an engaging conversation. I usually am in kind of a flow state when I'm talking to people. But sometimes like I just get super fucking tired and bored. And no, there's a reason that I feel that. And so sometimes I'll tell them like, hey, I feel like we're like disengaged in this conversation right now. What's up? And using your own emotions as a human being is something you do. So like when you see the stakes online with Dr. K stuff, it's I understand what happened. It was incorrect in what he did, but there's a kind of a risk in doing these things, and you can certainly get overwhelmed.
Do you ever feel I guess like really frustrated with certain clients, like where someone like you kind of
No,
know that
I mean I
person's not
don't.
really. No, okay.
So
I mean, in the end they pay for it, right? So
well, it's not even that they pay for it. It's if you want to come to therapy, it's your responsibility to get better. Like I'm here to like help you along with the journey, and I'm giving you 100% of my attention. So I had like 7 hours of therapy today, and I'm fucking mentally drained. So I give you my attention for a full 53, 45 minutes around that range, and it's no, yeah. So it's. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
and yeah, and I think that in the end, I mean, do you try to relate to people in like while like
I
doing
don't.
therapy?
I wouldn't say I try to relate to people. I feel like you have to actually relate to people.
Like it's a highly empathic kind of line of work, right? Like
So
like it's
all so pretty much my goal in most sessions is to understand something as fully as possible. And what that comes off to people by is that they feel obviously understood and seen. It's a very powerful feeling if you've had that before in a relationship with someone, that they're able to like really understand you, like at the core of you. And so always what I'm trying to do when I'm speaking to someone is, again, I don't give a shit what words people use. I don't care about that at all. I'm just trying to understand like the actual thought that they're trying to convey to me through language. So it's more about like a how you interact with someone, I guess, than the techniques that you do very often. It has to come off authentic, and you have to actually genuinely, like, I genuinely want to know these people. I want to understand what makes them work. I find it fascinating. Such a privilege that people just come tell me all their fucking problems that are really difficult and find me to be useful in that way.
So it's not as clinical as people think it is. Like it's not
It
as
can be. It absolutely can be. I don't necessarily do therapy in that way. There are different modalities that are like, all right, this is a 6-session essentially like protocol where there's kind of almost a curriculum that you're teaching people, mindfulness techniques and other, cognitive behavioral techniques. And it's absolutely a thing. And there's a lot of data to show its effectiveness. I tend to do more of a longer kind of incorporating other modalities of therapy when I do it.
Okay, interesting. And I think this is like where it like gets interesting with Ayurveda and with other religious things. Or well, Ayurveda is not necessarily religious, but for instance, anonymous alcoholics. Like I personally have a lot of problems with AA. As in, that basically the government can say you have to go to AA, and even though you're an atheist or a Hindu or a Muslim, whatever, there's like specific, like a lot of AA is deeply religious, like Judeo-Christian, where it's like, I heard that like the first like 6 rules of engaging in AA, they have to do something with religion, and they say you can replace God with anything. It can be a stone, but in the end, it's still religious doctrine. And but that aside, if that was like an optional thing that you could choose from, like, do you think that like a religious spin to therapy can be helpful for a patient?
Absolutely. If you use religion, I think Jordan Peterson honestly does it the best. That's what he does. Is he takes the Bible and uses the stories that are in that to convey certain psychological narratives to people. And I think what you're trying to do when you're communicating to anyone, again, is the most basic concept is I have an idea in my head, and I want to get it into your head, so I have to use words. So I have to come up with words that you're going to understand in a way that I'm going to try to convey my idea as clearly as possible to you. So yeah, I think absolutely, if people are, the Bible or whatever their religious context is, and that, or just if that's an easy way for them to understand a story, I think it's fine to use it in that way. But obviously, you can use religious in a very different way that I think would be inappropriate as well.
Like, for instance, do you or have you personally ever used religious metaphors or something like that when you knew that a client was religious?
No,
Or
because I'm not religious.
okay, so you yourself would not really go into that realm when you don't believe in it.
Well, if they wanted to talk about it, I would be very clear with my beliefs and where I am with things, and we can have a conversation about it. Because I'm personally somewhat agnostic. I have no fucking idea, and I have Christian friends of mine that I love the way they speak. They convey ideas in a certain way, and I understand exactly what they're talking about. They're just using kind of a Christian language to convey the same idea that I can say in my secular way.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think would a therapist or well, yeah, let's keep it to therapy. Like, where do you think would a therapist cross a line with religious doctrine?
To me, it's mostly just one. The biggest thing, obviously, is about consent and being upfront about what's going on. So usually, you would have to like say to the client, like, "Hey, I have this religious belief, and sometimes I use this to convey an idea. Are you okay with that?" If the client says no, like, don't use it. You should be more, versatile to not have to lean on that always.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't obviously, if you're proselytizing, you probably shouldn't be using religion to like judge people and make them feel bad about their behaviors. So I can't see how you would use it in some like a. I feel like it'd be really hard to be like a fundamentalist Christian and therapist because you have to be so non-judgmental. But I'm sure there's a religious context in which they do it, but I don't know it.
Yeah, it must be bad if you go to therapy because you were like bullied, or your family has disdain for like homosexuals, and then the
Yeah,
therapist says God hates fags. Must be pretty bad.
I do wonder how like a Christian. I don't know the question. So they obviously deal with it some way. If a Christian therapist deals with like homosexual feelings with their client, like what, do they have to just find a new person?
I I wonder about that too, because the really, I mean, I don't know if that is really like that big of a thing in America. Like from the like European perspective, like we sometimes get like the most exaggerated like like perceptions of people. But one thing that I noticed is that there's still is stuff like gay conversion therapy and stuff like that kind of shit, where people try to like change how people think, change how people view things, like in very drastic ways.
Hmm.
So I wonder, like, for instance, in that context, like, it's kind of a weird situation where a gay Christian might come to a therapist and legitimately try to get rid of his homosexuality, right? Like it's like he does consent to it, but at the same time, what he's doing might be extremely self-destructive.
Yeah. I've always hated the idea of using psychology as a way to manipulate people's thoughts into the direction that you decide. So like I don't like that's why like I view therapy in the way that I do, and that it's like anti-manipulation. I just want to know what you want, and then let's figure out how to get there. So what I'm gonna try to help you do is figure out what you want to do. Because I don't fucking care. It's your life. If you want to feel better, you got to figure out what the fuck you want to do. So yeah,
It's almost like a nihilistic kind of way of thinking, right? Like where it's like I'm here to help you, but if you don't figure yourself out, then I can't help you, basically,
yeah.
right?
I you
Like,
the when what's one of the first couple of classes in my social work program? You just what was it saying? You don't ever work harder than your client. Because I can't like get you there. You have to do the things that we talk about. Like you have to follow through and make actionable steps to make your life better. You have to do all the work. I don't have to do all the work. I get to talk to you for an hour about interesting stuff. Hopefully provide you maybe some useful exercises to do. And then you're on your merry way and you gotta fucking deal with your actual life yourself.
did you ever get like too invested in certain clients, or like did you ever like do more than you were
No,
basically expected
not
of, or?
not really. I'm very careful about that, and I think because of my attitude, it's like your own life. I don't tend not to get invested. I've had moments of I so when I worked at the schools, I mean I deeply cared about these kids, but there's a lot. I'm your therapist. I'm not your friend. I'm not a teacher in school. I'm your therapist. I play a certain role in your life. And I care about you deeply, but I'm not your friend, not your dad, I'm not any of this shit. So I think that kind of attitude made it very easy for me to understand this. If there's a distance and I play my role, and it's important that that distance is maintained so that I can play the role. Which is yeah,
And there's also like this discussion, like, and that goes like more into the Mr. Girl stuff, like his investigation into Dr. K and stuff,
Mhm.
where, for instance, like this notion of you know like the dual relationships, right? Because like I also heard that there are exceptions to the rule
yeah.
where a therapist can have a dual relationship with
So
someone.
I had to have a dual relationship at my workplace. So I had to be their therapist as a social worker, but I also sometimes had to stand in and be a teacher or an administrator and be the one that is punishing them. And it absolutely creates a conflict. Sometimes in the places I work, the students were incredibly aggressive and violent, and I would have to restrain them. So I'm
Mm.
exerting force and physically holding them back. They're not happy, obviously, when this is happening. I'm a pretty big guy, and so there's a conflict there. But you know, my duty to keep them safe supersedes that conflict. So ethics, the thing that's hard about ethics is that the rules themselves are you know understand. They're black and white kind of. They're easy to figure out. But often there's two things happening at once in an actual real life situation. There might be 5 ethics conflicting with one another. You have to kind of figure out on the fly which supersedes, and that's why it's important to read your ethics code. It's hard. I've read it a couple of times. I don't have it fucking memorized, but I'm one of the things I'm really happy about this whole Mr. Girl situation is that it's forcing me to go back read ethics. I think he did a great job making ethics hot. It was great. So I appreciate this because it certainly helped me brush up on things that I don't think about all the time. Because usually, at least for me, I'm trying to think about like client care. What can I do to help my clients, be better, be healthier in whatever way that is. So I'm reading about therapy and trying to figure out how I can do that better. You're not always thinking about ethics, but it's good. We should.
And I find it funny that like one thing that I want to just touch on very quickly. In the Mr. Girl server, I also noticed that like you were like one of the, so to speak, one of the first naysayers, right? Like as in like, Mr. Girl was like doing the investigation. I was helping with research a bit, and then you were always getting into conversations with people, and people had like really strong reactions to you for basically disagreeing.
Yeah.
And I think to this day, to this day, even after the release of the Dr. K Reckless video, I have noticed that, still this whole thing about what is ethical, what is unethical, what is therapy, what isn't therapy, it's still not defined. And one thing that, I was wondering is if Mr. Girl would be able to find this divide, like with the experts that he talked about. I mean, maybe he could have made a case, but he mostly talked about boundaries, like basically, talking about getting into the relationship.
Him and Dr. K did the same thing, in which that bothered me. So in Mr. Girl's video, there's an implication that he had already decided that this was therapy, and so he just had experts talk about the rules that when you're in therapy, these are what the boundaries are, and these are why they're important. But if he's not in a therapeutic relationship, his video doesn't make any sense anymore. His opinion, I've talked to him about it in chat. It's like he just knows it's obvious, and he doesn't want to have the conversation whether there's therapy or not. I think it's much less clear whether this is or isn't what's going on. And a lot of that is always dependent on the information that we don't have, which is what was the informed consent process like behind the scenes. Like if I sat down with you before we did this, and I sat down with you, I made you sign a piece of paper, I read the paper to you, I made sure you understood in that this isn't a relationship, this isn't a therapeutic relationship, this is a medical relationship. We're gonna have an interview about psychological stuff. I might ask you about your family, I might ask you about these things. If you want to say no, you can say no, and we'll stop it. I'll stop immediately doing this. So I have no idea how that went. I don't think Dr. K is a stupid guy. He's a psychiatrist. He's been trained much better than I have. And I would definitely know to do an informed consent process if I was dreaming of doing something even remotely like this. Which personally I wouldn't, because I'm a pussy and I don't want to break these goddamn rules and have crazy people like Mr. Girl come after and fucking like kill my family.
I just find interesting that Mr. Girl seems to have walked back a little bit on certain positions. Like for instance, in the beginning, there was the sense of what he's doing is unethical on multiple levels. But then during the Collins, I'm not sure if you watch the Collins show, but at the Collins show, where not Advice and Confessions, but where Dr. K fans were able to respond to him.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Someone actually asked you, like, where the fuck were you? You could have just talked to him now.
Yeah, I know. I think I think someone there was like, I was playing video games, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But there, for instance, like, I find really interesting that at the, like, nearing the end of the show, I think he like had this little booklet with the guidelines in there. And then he said that Dr. K on stream, nothing in the streams that Dr. K did would necessarily violate any one of those guidelines. At least that is what I remember from how he put things. I'm gonna pull a clip up when I edit the interview and like put it in, like, to show what it is. But
right? We
What
can
he is
take
doing is doing therapy outside of a physician-patient relationship. If he formed a physician-patient relationship with these people, then he wouldn't be breaking this rule. But he's not doing that. And
think
your
then
argument,
if it's
your argument,
true-
I get your argument. You're saying because the ethics board is not going to be okay with what he's doing
yeah.
because they're too old, therefore you are giving him a pass to just break all the rules.
No, I'm not.
You're
No, I'm not.
you're giving him a pass
No,
to
I'm
break
not,
every.
Max.
You're giving him a
I'm
pass
really
to.
not.
You're giving him a pass to break any rule that he needs to in
No,
service
not.
in service of overruling on by going rogue, overruling that
Nope.
that ruling that you think the
We
ethics
are
board
where
will
we
make.
are, Max. He did what he did, right? The
He's
question
still
is
doing it.
how are we going to move forward?
I shot this man already, okay? He's already dead. The question is, guys, how are we going to move on from this? We're going to move forward by fucking punishing you, arresting you, and throwing the fucking book at you. That's how we're going to move forward.
I think that would be a travesty of justice by the
You're
APA's
changing the
own
subject. You said
standards.
that the rules are outdated, and I want to know which rules you think are outdated because he's breaking a lot of them.
Any rule that prevents him from doing Twitch therapy live on Twitch, to be specific, yeah.
I don't know that there is a rule in here that would prevent that.
Confidentiality, probably.
No, you can waive confidentiality.
So there
You can
is
have a patient-
nothing.
There's nothing. There's nothing in. So Dr. K's
Earlier in the-
grand vision of what he wants to do. I want to do therapy with people on Twitch. The things that are preventing him from being able to do that are forming a real doctor-patient relationship, which means to talk to. So let's use Reckful as an example. Dr. K has to be licensed in Texas in order to do that. Okay, but there's lots of people who just go get a license in the state that they want to practice therapy in. So he could go do that. And he could say, here are the states I'm licensed in, and I want to practice therapy with these people. 2, the person probably has to be able to competently and safely waive their confidentiality. So Reckful probably is not a good candidate for that. You'd need to find somebody healthier. But there are people who could do that. Like, I don't think the review board is as stringent as you think. I think that they probably would be okay with...
Don't. They would not. And
you have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
You know they would not. You know that he couldn't go over there and just say, hey, I want to do therapy live in front of 100,000 people.
Dude, that's not how that's not how a research proposal goes. You don't just go over there and say this. He would need to write a proposal, like do actual work and sit down, come up with a proposal, come up with all the things that could go wrong and what contingency plans for what he's going to do, and then propose a research study. And then he would need to do a study, and that would need to get approved, and then go from there. But there's no inherent rule in this book that says that you can't do therapy live on Twitch.
Out of a window.
I think it was something along those lines, and he basically shifted the goalposts a little bit. I think, where it went away from what he's doing is completely unethical on multiple grounds to he didn't establish a boundary correctly, and this is the main problem, which I agree with. But
yeah, I agree with that too. He absolutely could have been much more clear on his boundaries, and I thought it was really unfortunate that he didn't.
And I think another point that he kind of highlighted was the whole how do you treat suicidal people, like especially on stream, like because for instance for me, like my view on like interviews and stuff, I really don't like the live aspect because people can slip up about anything. They can accidentally dox themselves, or they can say information that might get them in trouble legally, or they might say something super fucking embarrassing that they don't want out there, because it's like kind of tickled out of them and stuff. So for me, the ethical option, so to speak, but that's my personal kind of way of looking at things, is do everything pre-recorded like we do right now. So in case you accidentally say something, you can just tell me basically afterwards and basically be like, yeah, dude, please cut that out. Like, I don't want that out there, And then I can be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to extend you the olive branch, so to speak. Like, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to be a dick.
Yeah, so from my understanding, Dr. K did that to the best of his ability with Twitch, which obviously you can't do if it's live, but apparently they would take the
Yeah.
video down if the person was uncomfortable or something like that. So yeah, you're correct that would be less risk if you were to do it pre-recorded. I mean, there's just no doubt. But yeah, and I would never go on stream with a suicidal person. Because I don't know what streaming does to people. I think that's one of the things that I wanted to come in and talk to Miss Girl and just the people around this about, is that like we actually don't know what the impact of this is, and everyone always talks with such certainty, and they have no experience in any of this shit. And it drives me crazy that everyone talks with absolute certainty that they know everything. I'm like, this is just really fucking complicated. Like, I don't know either. And I've been doing this for 11 years, and like, I spent all my time doing this. I haven't just like studied this over like a 3-week period because there's internet drama. I've spent 11 years studying this, and I don't understand. And I'm not fully understanding the exact thing that's going on. It's weird. There's some really uncomfortable stuff that I saw on there, and he could again establish the boundaries better, but I don't actually know what's going on.
Yeah, and there were definitely also like things where Dr. K said stuff which to me was very disturbing. I'm sure he didn't mean it in a bad way, but what he said sometimes was pretty bad. For instance, the thing that stuck out to me, like that still sticks out to me, is this thing they said, if I wasn't here on a Friday night to talk to you, who would? You know, who except me would talk to you? There was like one specific thing that he like told like some guy on stream, and that first is like to me like, man, if I heard that, it would be fucking soul crushing, like at least to me. But then on the other side, I want to also like remind myself like this is maybe this is something that Dr. K didn't mean in that sense. Because I think in therapy also, I think a professional can also fuck up sometimes and say something that comes across as like bad, and then
Bro,
you know,
in real dumb shit. I said dumb shit for like week on end, and then all of a sudden I realized I've been saying dumb shit for like weeks. It happens all the time, especially as you're developing as a therapist. And Dr. K's been doing this for a while, but he's still somewhat young. He must have only like, how old do you think he is? Do you know how old he is?
I always guessed he's like maybe late 20s or like 30 or something.
I think he's like mid-30s. I think he's about my age. I think he's probably mid-30s. And so he can't have been doing this any longer than I've been. Probably less length, because he had to go through all of fucking medical school and all this shit. He had to have way more schooling than I did. So he's been practicing a less amount of time than I do. So he's gonna make mistakes, of course. He's still somewhat, to me, a new clinician, essentially. I feel like I'm a somewhat new clinician.
And the main difference, I guess, between Dr. K and you is, for instance, like Dr. K is like a psychiatrist, so body and mind, and you as a social worker, you focus more on the mind, right?
I mean, there's more distinctions than that, but he's a medical doctor, and so he's been in medical school and understands medication, all that good stuff. I've pretty much focused. Yeah, it was. I mean, I think I think the social work education was complete dog shit, and it was pretty much basic psychology that I got in my undergraduate regurgitated to me. So I found it almost worthless in most ways. But you know, it's what it is. The internships were useful. I thought I've learned on the job, and just you continue to read afterwards. But yeah, they're medical doctors that have an understanding of medication in that aspect. And I mostly work with the mind. And if you're a social worker, you help people out in various ways in life.
Is there something that you can't do that a psychologist can?
That I cannot do?
Yeah, something that you like. What would distinguish you? Like from a psychologist?
Well, one, they make way more money than I do. Two is that so they can be a research psychologist. So that's a PhD. They are the ones that do research papers. I mean, I could do research if I wanted. I could get a PhD in social work, but there's no fucking reason. But as like a clinical psychologist, you could do therapy, exactly what I do essentially, and just make more money. You can do testing. So in the education system, there's psychologists that do all of testing for the students, stuff like that. You can do research. There's different avenues that are pretty much psychologist specific, but like what I do in actual therapy, they do essentially the exact same thing I do. They're more trained in certain ways. I'm not going to deny that, but essentially we're doing the same thing.
Okay. And yeah, one thing that I find interesting with the Dr. K situation, there's like an element of being out for blood, and I also have to be self-aware here. Like what I'm doing here, like I'm also exploring like Ayurveda, and I'm getting into the pseudoscience stuff, and I'm gonna use Dr. K as an example as well, because I mean he's the subject of discussion right now, and I would be stupid not to do that. Even though the Ayurveda stuff, this is nothing illegal, nothing unethical, at least on the books unethical that is going on, But a thing that I found really interesting is that now Mr. Girl kind of popularized this idea of Dr. K being actively malicious, being sadistic. I mean, I think he even said at one point,
He said the
Dr.
exact
K
words.
sadistic
It
and
upset
malicious,
me.
right? Yeah, and I think that again, like if you create this whole idea of like, let's help gamers, let's use really cringy fucking gamer words like AoE healing, and
Yep.
today I lost 80% of my HP bar, like that shit. And then you make a foundation on top of that, and you make a coaching program, and you build this big community centered around mental health, and you think the whole Eastern perspective might help people more because you think the Western psychology is kind of failing people and stuff. Isn't that all more out of an empathetic kind of, benevolent motivation, and less a sadistic urge? Because if he was actually sadistic, I mean, he could fuck with people in his private practice all the time, he wouldn't need to go public.
He's sure doing a lot of good for being a sadistic person. I don't know a lot of sadistic people that set up foundations to help people and spend all this time and thinking about this. And so I know they don't like the net good argument. I think I'm not even making that argument right now that he's the net good and so he should get off. I'm just saying, if he's sadistic, he's really bad at it.
Yeah,
like the whole Reckful thing happened again. Obviously, like I think he made some mistakes there, but like he's not sadistic, dude. Like he's a dude that seems to care a lot about people and just trying to help. And I agree with him in the sense that there's the gamers and all this shit. It's really young people are a fucked up demographic. Fucking in a Discord car with some Zoomers earlier, and like I just don't understand how they see the world. It's so different, so confusing with all the labels and everything. They're confused. It's crazy.
I'm fucking confused. I'm a Zoomie
confused
as well.
I'm confused too, and I'm someone that I'm really good at trying to understand what people are talking about, and this stuff like doesn't even make sense to me, because they're just describing like feelings and putting a label like demi-romantic or whatever the fuck that shit is. I'm like,
what the fuck is demi-romantic?
I think it's that you like only attract to someone that you have romantic attraction to. So you won't just like find someone like hot walking down the street, but you only find them attractive because you're in a romantic relationship. I think that's what that means. So to me, like, okay, you're monogamous. Like you're adding this like extra fancy label to something that's just like kind of normal. You don't need to label it.
I never understood pansexual.
You just want to fuck everything, I think.
Yeah, but like,
aren't you just
for me,
bisexual
it's like,
then?
Exactly. Like for instance, like for
me,
like
I guess
I'm
it's not trans inclusive would be my guess. Is why that would.
like, yeah, dude, like I'm gonna here, I guess, come out of a closet, but for me, it's like I mean, I don't care. Like I'm open to anything, and but why do I need to like basically slap a label on myself to be more inclusive? I mean, I guess I am bisexual. I mean, how more inclusive does it get? Everyone has preferences.
This is my problem though. We have gone from the opposite end of like the fucking Christian crazy don't ever talk about sex to like the opposite end of the spectrum. We need to meet someone in the middle where like I don't need to fucking know your sexuality. I don't fucking care. I don't want to know your sexuality. I'm married. Why is everyone broadcasting this? I don't understand it.
That's exactly what I think too. Because for instance, like I myself I just don't see the point of, for instance, like saying oh, I'm gay, or oh, I'm bisexual, or oh, I'm trans, or I'm whatever. Because in the end, what I do in the bedroom, what you do in the bedroom, with all due respect, I don't give a shit. I don't want people to talk about what I do in the bedroom. You know, like for me, it's kind of, I don't know. Like I guess for me, that's just a very hard boundary that I don't want people to. I don't want people to talk about me in that way. I don't want them to care about that. You know, because for instance, there's a lot of situations. Like a friend of mine, he's more, I guess, vocal about that stuff. He himself is bisexual. And I also told him, like, dude, like, sure, people sometimes talk weird about gay people, but why does it bother you that much? You just don't have to tell that. Like, you don't have to tell everyone that you're this, or that. You know, I mean, you're only gonna bring problems to yourself. It's like talking about politics or religion in public. You know, where it's like you're inviting conflict, so to speak.
Well, I think people are missing, and is that a sexuality that's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
It's not your entire identity, and it doesn't need to be this thing. I get it. If people like are oppressing you and doing mean shit to you and like treating you like shit because of just that, okay, like yeah, you should fight back. That's fine. But like it's once the rights are equal and all this shit, and it's generally fine, which I think it generally is in the West. We just need to move on with our lives, and just like we don't need to talk about it so much. Like it's just one part of you. We can talk about lots of other parts of you too. The current focus on like these minor specific parts of people in the identities, whether it's race, gender, and all this stuff, there's so much to being a human that is not your race and not your gender that we all share. And everyone wants to talk about these kind of somewhat superficial things that do matter. I'm not going to say they don't matter to people. They obviously do. But there's just so much more to you than those things. And we tend to focus on these, what I view as somewhat small, like, of the whole human, it's a pretty small portion of it. We tend to focus on way too much, in my opinion. We need to there's way more important things in life.
Yeah. Actually, race is also like a very fucking dicey subject because like a lot of people care way too much about race.
I mean, it matters. Again, it affects people's lives, and we have to absolutely just acknowledge that. So when I worked in schools, I was the only white person there. It was all black people.
Mm-hmm.
And we just didn't really talk about it. They were just people. Again, I think you don't have to necessarily talk about it. If you just treat people in a way that like you would just treat anyone else with love and care, and you're trying to help someone, they don't care what race you are. Like,
yeah,
almost. And I worked with like hyper aggressive kids that are cursing you out. They fight teachers and do all this shit. It's maybe like 20 times, and these kids are screaming all the time. Have I ever had any kind of racial thing thrown at me? And they were just angry. They were trying to say the meanest thing possible. It just wasn't really too much of an issue there. Sometimes it was, but it's a part of their existence. Being black wasn't their problem. They had human problems. They fucking had no father in their home, or they witnessed trauma. They had trauma. Like they had just normal human issues, and sometimes it had to do with their race, and that's fine. Like that's obviously a part of their lives, and you have to address it when it's there. But just the overwhelming majority was just human problems, and I wish people understood that there's just way more to life.
And I guess this individualism, it's also something that sometimes gets lost in the sauce, right? Because a thing that I, for instance, see lately with identity is that people get kind of thrown in the same bucket, but they don't necessarily want to be in there. For instance, at least from what I understand in America, there's like, for instance, the concept of, white and black, but it's not really a race thing. It's all like I think it also gets into language and how you dress and how you act, because I for instance heard this concept of being too white to hang with the black kids, but being too black to hang with the white kids or something, like where it's not necessarily your skin color, but like how you conduct yourself and stuff.
Yeah, I've had many of my coworkers would actually talk to me about, they were like highly articulate, intelligent. They would say like the more ghetto people, for lack of a better term, like wouldn't talk to them anymore. They would like look at them weird.
Because they don't talk any Ebonics, basically,
It's not. I don't know if it's Ebonics, but they just don't have the same inflection. And like that, she's. I'm just thinking of this one woman in particular who I worked with as a speech pathologist. She was super intelligent. She's a great woman, but she just was different from the rest of the coworkers. There was a clear difference. That I noticed it. The way she carried herself was proper. And is that white? I don't know. It's just proper to me. Like, and it didn't fit in with the rest of the people there.
But it's interesting that there is this like weird distinction where like people might say, oh, someone is like more articulate, someone is more
Well, that's what.
however, and
Yeah.
then people project onto that, oh, she's white, so that means she's a traitor to us,
that's
as
that's
other
the
black people.
that's the conversation I would have with her. We would talk about it. I'm like you're just articulate. Like that's not like there's not a race component to that, and like there's something inherently racist. Like obviously in that. It's just saying like, well, anyone can be articulate. They're just being articulate. Like why are we attaching a race to it? It's very strange.
And for us, there's also a lot of, for instance, white people that are not that articulate. Like for instance, like
there's a lot of fucking retards out there. And a lot of them are white.
and then there's also like people that they just adopt a different way of talking. Like for instance, in Germany, what's really interesting is that a lot of German kids, they adopt like ways of speaking that is more like of the like Turkish sense or like more Arabic. And honestly, part of me thinks that's actually a really like beautiful thing, like where someone can like you basically hang with certain kinds of people, and then they say certain things, and then dude, like here in Germany, like there's people that say bratan, which is basically Russian for brother, bratan, or they say Allah, Allah, Vala, like these like kind of Turkish words, as filler words, like instead of like saying hey dude, what's up, they say something like hey bratan, what's up, or when they recount a story, they just throw in Allah, and it's not a religious thing, it's just a filler word, and I think that's actually kind of cool. But then there's like people that look down on that, and they think like they have like this weird elitist kind of, you shouldn't say that, you're white, you're not an Arab, you shouldn't say that, and it's kind of weird to me.
Well, it's like I think what people don't necessarily understand with like the whole language thing is this is how I always try to talk to people about it when I was trying to like help people understand how to do my job, and people were obviously very unexperienced, and so you have to break this thing down very simply. And so when you're talking to kids that are from these areas that they use a lot of slang, they curse a lot, they're very aggressive in these things. When you're talking to someone and like something's not making sense, like try to look at it like they're speaking another language, and your job is to like decipher what they're saying. Don't pay right attention to the words that people are using. Just try to understand what people are saying, and it all makes sense. But people get so focused and hyper-focused on how someone says something, how someone delivers the message. They're delivering the message how they know how to deliver the message. If they grew up in a place where they have certain slang, or they have certain inflections, or they do certain things in the language, that's how they do it. But it's not to say that you think it's better or worse necessarily. It's efficient in there where they grew up. And it doesn't work sometimes when you want to go to a different area that's not like that. They're going to be like, what the fuck? This is weird. We don't do this in our area. It's a pretty normal thing, but like we attach so much moralizing to this.
Do you ever adopt certain words that like kids use as well?
Yeah.
Like
I use the slang all the time there, but you use it in an authentic way. Like I would always ask them about it. If I didn't know a word, I was like, this was my rule. Because there was like, you couldn't be disrespectful. And so they would say something I didn't understand. I'd be like, what does that mean? They're like, I'm not going to tell you. I'm like, well, if you don't tell me, there's like a point system. I'm like, you're going to lose your point because I'm just assume that it's disrespectful. So teach me this. And so they would teach me usually. And I would tell them, if you teach me, and I won't take your point away. Let's be honest about it.
What are the highlights? What are some good words?
One I really liked was "guh."
Guh?
Guh. You getting me, guh. And so it would just be like, you're getting me angry, essentially. And they would just use it in all different ways, and it worked really well. It was very funny. They do this thing where when they'll talk to you and they don't respond to you by your name, they're just like, what's up, Mo? Or what's up, Joe? And they'll just have different names, or what's up, Bob? The names will change depending on the times. Different years that name has changed. It's very interesting.
And wow, so and the names like
they don't
you
mean anything.
getting called Joe or Bob. It's
just a way. It's just like, I'm not gonna give you the time to remember your fucking name. You're just Bob. It's like a kind of disrespectful thing to say to someone, essentially. Or it's your friend, or you're just like, or it's a greeting to your friend. You're just like fucking around.
That's really funny. I guess that's like a little bit like rebellious, like being like.
Well, these kids were complete assholes.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, sure. That's really interesting.
Yeah, the slang was great. Again, if you appreciate it, like people teach you shit. I'm just like this. I'm very white, so I'm very white. I'm very cis. I'm very male. I'm very straight. I'm all this shit. I grew up around all white people, but I'm just curious about stuff. And if you just ask people genuinely, and they'll explain it to you, it's really great.
And I think this is like where like the whole like where the empathy thing comes in, and like, you know, like the understanding part, because for instance, like how people talk, I mean, that's like a really big part of someone's identity, you know, like for instance, like I am a sort of person that, you know, I'm really brash, like I can have like really intelligent conversations, at least I hope so, but at the same time, I can also I can also use like really foul language, or, you know, like I say retarded, you know, or
You've seen me in chat, yeah. I can.
dude, yeah, like you're like a fucking master shit poster. I fucking love you, dude.
I love it. I can just any impulse that I have, I just type in, hit enter. Like I just don't fucking care, and I just do things that make me laugh. I love the shit posting. It's so much fun.
And like after a while, like I noticed, like at first it was like, you know, and I mean you still do this, but like at first it was pretty much only the thought out, you know, the email posts, you know, okay, so this is the first paragraph, this is the second one, and then at the end, like I stuck the landing, there's like the last sentence, you know, like really thought through. And now you do a mix of both, where you can be really like you can like write really thought out like paragraphs, but then you say, oh, this is fucking retarded, you know, or this is fucking.
Both of them are kind of just my stream of conscience. I'm just writing it out whatever I'm thinking.
Exactly, I find this amazing, like because again, like there's people that they I just hate the snobbery of like, you know, things have to be a certain way. I just fucking hate that. I think it's goes against what language actually is, because language is like a breathing thing, like a living thing, you know, because for instance in Germany there's a concept called Denglish. Do you have any idea what that is, Denglish?
I'm guessing it's like a mix of Danish and English.
Not Danish, German and
Okay.
English, because German in German is called Deutsch.
Okay, makes sense.
So yeah, and that is basically mixing the German language with English words. For instance, gestern bin ich zum Supermarkt gelaufen und da war ein fucking Hobo.
Sounds
like-
like good with some American language in there.
Yeah, it's basically like I went to the supermarket and there was a fucking hobo. And like, or, you know, now with like internet stuff, you know, where it's like, der Typ, der streamt jetzt. This guy, he's streaming. You know, like we do have German words to describe these things, but these words fucking suck. So we use other like English words that are better, you know?
That's crazy.
And yeah, because like a lot of English words are like
slowly invading your country.
basically, I mean, there's a lot of English influence, but you know, the thing is this, right? Like English and German, for instance, if you actually look at like a lot of words, they're really fucking similar. Like they're super similar. Like Scheiße and shit, very similar. Or
Yeah, and shit's a better word.
or wine, vine. It almost comes off the tongue exactly the same. Wine, vine.
Was it easier for you to learn English, you think? I'm assuming this was not your first language.
My mother tongue is Italian.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Germany, so that is the language I speak like the most in my daily life. Actually, no, that's wrong. Right now, I mostly speak English. And German is my secondary. It's kind of weird, but basically I learned English through basically the internet. So when I was 7 and up, I was on websites where I shouldn't have been on, like Newgrounds.
Nice.
Fucking Newgrounds, especially Newgrounds. But then also YouTube, and then I started playing video games like Team Fortress 2. and there I learned shit talking. And I think shit talking is one of the best skills ever, and I hate that modern games.
Oh, dude, it's the worst. You can't shit talk anymore. I hate it.
Yeah, it's bad. Like in Overwatch, you can get banned for, calling someone a fag. And I think that's a travesty. Like, why? Why can't I call someone a fag?
And not only, so I wasn't even like, I didn't try to be mean to people. I just wanted to shitpost like I do in the Discord server, and you can't do that. You just can't have fun.
And a lot of the times it's not even meant in like a bad way. It's just
I really try never to be malicious. Like, I'm always joking around. Like, yeah, it's fun. Sometimes I want to use foul language because it's funny to me. It's funny to me personally. Saying the most outrageous thing possible is funny.
And nowadays, like the humor in that is kind of getting lost. And for instance, like one time, for instance, like I was like in a voice call, and then someone like asked to like a person, and then I was like, oh yeah, that guy, he's like that fag that, and then immediately like, oh, what did you say? Oh, you can't say that, and then it's like. Then like you get put on the spot, and then you have to justify yourself, all that shit. But like I basically used the South Park definition of a faggot, like which is basically someone that is incredibly annoying, basically.
Yeah, that's what that word used to mean.
Yeah, and
so I
basically
when I grew up, I used that word all the time, but I never used it to actually be aggressive towards a gay person because I had no issues with gay people. I would use it to call my friends instead of being fucking fags.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically
word.
what it is.
So sad I can't use it anymore.
And it's and now retarded is getting like the same treatment.
Well, actually,
like
I'm sorry. I still use it with my high school friends because we still use the same humor as them. But I can't use it with new people, essentially.
And yeah, like
but you're just talking shit. That's what, again. This is again. I'm going like way out on a tangent, conjecture, but this is how men bond with each other. They just talk shit, and I feel like society is so fucking feminine and pussy. No one can just talk shit anymore. And that's half of the issue with all the language stuff, and no one can handle anyone saying anything. If you fucking get on like a COD lobby, fucking Xbox, you can handle shit. It's not that bad.
And the funny thing is, one thing that I noticed with that's true for Europeans. Europeans, the way we Europeans bond is by hating each other. So basically, there are voice calls where there's Hungarians. Me as an Italian living in Germany, I get a lot of shit for being an Italian living in Germany. Okay, fascist and a Nazi. It's a perfect combination. Then you have Polish people, British people, whatever. We all shit on each other, but it's a weird, like, kind of endearing thing, where it's like I can take the piss out of you, you can take the piss out of me, and in the end we can shake hands and have fun, and it's never
the underlying thing when you can do that is that I like you, and it's if I like you enough, like we should be able to fuck with each other. Like it's to me, if I'm willing to engage with someone and fucking shitpost with them, it's because I like them. It's because I think they're going to understand that I'm being humorous and that I'm not being malicious. So when you're doing these things, they're funny because you're not actually trying to hurt anyone. Like you're trying to make a joke.
Yeah.
Now, if you're trying to fucking hurt someone, you're just being like racist and shit. Like that's not good. But if you were the group of, so when I worked at these schools, I hung out with my coworkers, and I was the only white person there, but they were cool people, and they would call me, you're my N-word, and I'm like, cool. It was funny. And we would make fun of each other about racial stuff. And it was funny because we liked each other. It was an enjoyable thing. It was a way that we bonded. And it's not always such a terrible thing. Like just you say the word and you're the worst person in the world. Or if you make a racial joke, you hate these people. And sometimes it's because I just don't see them as so fundamentally different than I am. I can joke around with them. Just like I joke around with a white person. They're just black. And so I call my white friends fags and all this shit. They're fucking, I say horrible things to them. Just because I love them. That's how we bond.
Yeah. There
doesn't make sense
there's
to
like
women.
One thing. There's like one thing. This is actually like one thing where like I'm also really like I still have this Newgrounds influence in me. When it comes to, for instance, like the N-word, like I refer to people as my again. or when I watch like a Ben Shapiro video, then I say, "Can you believe this?" again, or whatever. Like I refer.
You're not being serious.
What?
You're not being serious. Like you're like it's
Well, no, but
yeah.
and the funny thing is, I never use it for like referring to black people.
Yeah, because that's
And
mean.
that's
That's a horrible thing to do.
Exactly.
They're two
I would never.
things.
I would never be like, oh, look at this. Whatever. Like and I think this is like the thing that like is funny about this whole thing, or like actually like in the mrgirl server, a lot of times like when someone says something, then sometimes I'm just like again comma, and then I get into the paragraph, where it's like, and it's not even meant to be insulting. It's just being like, hey dude, and then it gets into the comment,
I'm sure it's also it's context specific. Like you're doing this in this place where people aren't really going to get riled up about this, and like they're not going to get super hurt and offended. But like you wouldn't do that in front of someone else that would like hurt them, because it would change depending on who you're talking to, from a funny thing or a way to make a point in your own way to like an offensive thing that's going to hurt someone's feelings. Like there's just no reason to do that, and I don't think you would do that because that wasn't the intent of it.
And that's a big thing, like the context thing, like for instance, like as you said, like you adopt certain language into therapy work, where like someone like where you learn like a word,
or you use someone's specific language. So if someone labels a feeling with a certain word, I try to use the word that they use so that they understand the word because they're using it.
Yeah, like for instance, like there's always like a time and place. Right, and I'm a big fan of modulating language, because with certain people you get along better if you adapt, and I don't think it's being fake. I think it's being considerate, basically.
Well, I can just tell you the way that I would do it is that I made it very clear that I was white and this was a foreign, and they were teaching me something, and it was, you kind of do it in a jokey way. So like sometimes they would try to teach me how to dance, and I cannot fucking dance, dude. I'm the white stereotype. I have no fucking like. I can play guitar, but I can't fucking dance. I have no rhythm when I move my body, apparently. So they try to teach me to dance, and I'm a fucking idiot. Like, and they make fun of me, and it's just kind of a joke. But again, I'm engaging in it. I'm trying something new, and they're trying to show me something, and so like everyone's having fun.
Yeah, and that's in the end like the beautiful thing. Like you're like genuinely curious at this point. Like what is their experience like, and like what do they do? What do they like?
Like, dude,
I bet they might also be rather curious about you sometimes, right?
As like a person or as like a white person? And I've had both.
In general. In general,
yeah. People like you just in therapy in general, your clients absolutely want to know about you.
Did you ever have the opportunity to teach a black kid something?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
that was kind of my job. I would have a caseload of like between 20 and 30 kids that I would see for therapy, and I'd be in their class, try to either sometimes teach them academics, because our teachers, I don't even want to get, it's a whole other issue with our special education system. So fucking stupid. It's retarded. The system's retarded, and it's trying to teach retarded kids. Retarded system's not going to be able to teach retarded kids. You need a smart system to do that, and we don't have one. So, but that's another issue. But yeah, all the time. I mean, this is my pitch to them. I was like, all right, like I want to teach you how to get the things that you want in life. And that sounds like something that's I want things, but people always think of like this stupid petty shit they want. I want shoes, or I want money, or some shit like this. No, like we're gonna sit down and talk and think about the things you actually want in life, and we're gonna see if we can get those things. But I think for them, that was my job, is to try to help them understand what they wanted and how to get it.
And to get back to the therapy stuff, I guess like one thing that I find curious about, like specifically to also like put people like Dr. K like more in the spotlight again, like when it comes to psychiatry, like where it's the body and mind and stuff. There's of course like the element of like relating to people, like for instance, if you have someone that believes in the doshas, like your doshas are imbalanced, balance them now, that shit. I mean, one thing is like to relate to them, like to use the doshas as this analog, where it's like, you're you're a specific type of person. You know, like you're a vata, you're like the air or some shit.
It's just a different way of saying ADHD symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what Dr. K always does, right? Like, I'm a vata type, or I'm a whatever type. I just know one type is mostly associated with fat people, and since I am a little bit fat myself, I find it really funny that I am that type, and I'm apparently a vata, you know? But I wonder, like, I just ask myself, like, how deep can a psychiatrist go with, you know, these ideological influences? Like can they recommend stuff like, you know, herbal treatments or yoga or like, you know, these more...
Yeah, so it depends. So we got to be very specific. Herbal treatments, I don't know. With him as a medical professional, I don't think he can legally prescribe people homeopathy. I'm not a doctor, but I don't think he can. On the other hand, absolutely he can suggest that people do yoga. I suggest to people that I actually don't, but I could absolutely. It seems like a great idea if people to do yoga.
And yoga's fucking tough. Like, I tried yoga once. That shit is actually really strenuous.
It's wonderful exercise, but it's for a different purpose in a therapeutic mindset, like as an intervention. It's trying to like explain it, but it's a mindfulness thing, trying to again actually get you out of your brain and into your body a bit.
And the meditation stuff, I can also fully vouch for that. Like a friend of mine, for instance, like he had problems with like intrusive thoughts, and as a layperson, I basically said, okay, look, I'm super fucking anxious. I'm extremely fucking anxious, and I tried the meditation shit. Like, how I do it is basically lay in bed and just zone out, or, you know, basically sit in a seat like that's comfortable and do fucking nothing, like nothing. And I basically explain it as like doing nothing, intentionally doing nothing. And for me, it's beneficial because it calms me down like a lot. Like I tend to just, I don't overthink that much anymore, you know, and that helps me. Like that helped me throughout like tough times. I don't do it every fucking day. I do it sometimes when I just feel bad. I just do it, you know, and then I feel better, basically. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, meditation, like when Dr. K like does like the meditative stuff, you know, the breathing techniques and stuff, I'm fine with that. I find that cool.
I think that's one of the things I think is absolutely excellent. There's a lot of research on meditation. Then it's all generally positive. There's some risks with some severe like schizophrenia and stuff like this that it can induce certain things that you want to be careful with. But overwhelmingly speaking, there's a lot of evidence meditation is wonderful. And so like him encouraging young people to do that aren't doing usually healthy things, they're sitting in front of their fucking computer playing video games, like eating Doritos generally. Yeah, I think that's great. Teach people meditation all day.
Then I guess the part where I personally get a bit pissed off when it comes to Ayurveda is like today I found a small documentary from a German broadcaster, which was about Ayurveda, and the doctor claimed to be able to determine what dosha character you are by measuring the pulse, by looking at your tongue, and by looking at the mucus under your eyelids.
Sounds real dumb.
Yeah, that's insane. And to me, like what that sounds like to me is basically mostly just are you fat or are you athletic? And if you are athletic, then you're like you're a vata, you're quick in everything and you do whatever, you know? And it's like these super like broad kind of things where it can apply to anyone, you know, where it's like, oh, you're super passionate about a lot of things and you jump around a lot. And then I would think to myself, yeah, that's me. That's totally me. But then when it comes to the other dosha where it's like, oh, you're lethargic and lazy and fat, then I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm that too. Like it's super broad. Like to me, it seems like any person can fall into these categories, right?
It seems like a really, really shitty personality model. It's like a really shitty version of the Big Five personality model. Is kind of how I see it. It's a much, well, not, I don't even know if shitty is the right word, but it's not scientifically backed, from my understanding, and it's they're trying to give you like a personality paradigm, just kind of like the Myers-Briggs. That's not really tested, from my understanding at least. It's not very psychometrically valid, so it's something that people find interesting.
And I think this is like where like it gets also. Okay, this is maybe like a provocative kind of question, maybe like a kind of dick question, but how much of a science is psychology?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you mean. I'll give you my thoughts, I guess. So, like, what my understanding, I guess, as well, because it's limited, but what my understanding is that there's a replication crisis going on right now, where they're having a really, really hard time seeing it, if the experiments really say what they're supposed to say. I read something the other night. There's this and it's hung on the wall of my office. I think it's pre-decorated where I work, and it's like a poster of. Have you ever heard of the Marshmallow Experiment?
What experiment?
So very simply, they put kids in a room. They give them one marshmallow, and they say, "Hey, if you don't eat this marshmallow, we'll give you two in 5 minutes," something like that.
Ah, that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what they said is that it shows that the kids that can delay gratification longer will have a better blah 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 outcomes later in life. So what they found though later when they redid this experiment is that it depended on who gave them the directions. So what most likely they may have been measuring actually was that kids at this age, how much do they want to impress the person that gave them the direction and do a good job. So there's all these testing psychology is so fucking difficult because you never know what you're actually measuring because there's so much shit going on that's it's not biology. You can't study it. You can't see it with your eyes. It's like, I don't know, I guess you call it like intrapsychic, I think, in certain things. It's like between two minds. There's no matter you can look at. And so it's so difficult to understand what we're even looking at and what are we actually measuring when we're thinking of human behavior. I think it's very difficult. And so there are a lot of the experiments in psychology. That's like one thing. Then there's just statistic things that they do very poorly. So it's not that hard of a science, I don't think. If I'm being 100% honest with you, I read a lot about therapy, and there are certain techniques and things that I do as far as like mindfulness techniques teaching people. And so there are times, about 20% of the time, I'm using stuff like that. That's kind of somewhat scripted, but I make it my own. It's like a very kind of like there's a formula to it. And then the other 80% of the time, I'm just going by my gut. And if something seems important to me and it flashes in my attention or my mind, I generally will tell them that I noticed a certain way they said something or certain words, something like this, and it seems important to me that maybe they don't notice these things about themselves. And that's kind of again why I'm there, is to pick up on things you don't notice about yourself. And it's just gut intuition. Just, why did I pick up on that sentence? I don't know, but I did. So I'm going to tell them. And so I don't know how much of a
Yeah.
science that is, but it seems to do something.
They're definitely. I did notice with, well, just like meeting people and talking to them, like a lot of the times, like people, they say something, but what they say, I mean, I do it too. You do it too. Like everyone does it. Where it's basically they say something, but they're trying to implicitly kind of tell you something.
Oh, I do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it can be fucking like, for instance, like if you like someone's cooking a lot, like, oh, we should do, like, we should cook dinner sometime, or or well, maybe not that explicit, but more like your shepherd's pie you make is really good. Did you do that lately? Or you have a guitar. Man, I would like to learn how to play a guitar. Like that kind of shit. Where it's like, of course, now those are like more exaggerated examples, but I did notice, like, with like discussions, like where sometimes I picked up that people think of themselves as lesser, or sometimes people, they seem to me to be like suicidal, or like really weird. It's just like these really weird things that you like pick up on, and then you're like, something is wrong here. For instance, like one thing that I noticed a lot of the times, I do that too, when you chat over text, you don't have much information, but one thing to me sticks out, and it's a period at the end. So a lot of my friends, they tend to be really fucking serious when they write me out of nowhere a full sentence uppercase letters, like where they have to be uppercase, and then they put a period at the end. That shit to me is like alarm bells, basically. Then I know, okay, this guy, he had a bad day, you know? And of course, it's not for everyone, but for instance, like I do think that people, like, they do want to send messages, and I think this is like where maybe the perception of psychology being formulaic, basically, kind of gets a bit shattered, maybe.
Well, and that, I think, important to mention what I described of what I did. That's how I do things. There are radically different ways where it is extremely formulaic, and there is a very strict structure to the therapy. And so that's one of the things that you ask, like, how scientific is psychology? Well, it depends on which one you're talking about. Like when you were talking about the Ayurveda stuff, and you mentioned like herbs that he would give him, and then like yoga, and like whoa, those are like two very different things. And so one of the hard things about psychology is because there are so many different modalities, so many different theories, it's very, very hard to know exactly which one is correct or which ones are doing anything. What are the something I always tried to find, and this is a question that I always had was, well, what is this? There's hundreds of modalities. Well, what's the element within all of these that make these work? And trying to find the commonalities between them. And so that was something that I always tried to do, was I look all over the place for different theories, because they all seem to work. They all seem to do something. So like, what can I glean from this to try to compile it to something that works in kind of different way? So it's
Hello? Hello? I think it cut out for a bit. Wait one sec. Oh.
My Discord has been freezing recently. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Yeah, Discord.
I don't know
Discord is a horrible fucking platform.
I have no idea where I was when I disconnected.
I think it was again about how formulaic therapy is, and you were like explaining that how you do things, how other people do things, it's always like different, basically.
Yeah, it's different. but what I was finishing on is that the key ingredient in a lot of this stuff is that it has to be authentic, and so it has to really come from you. So you have to rely on your own feelings and intuitions and things like that. And that's not necessarily a hard science. Like if I'm doing, chemistry, if I put the same three ingredients together, whether I give a shit about it or not, like I'm going to get the same fucking reaction. But there's this intangible thing in therapy, which is like you as a human being, that isn't necessarily, you can't just follow a formula, because the way I deliver a message and the way you deliver a message is completely fucking different.
And I guess like every time like there's always like a good application for a different kind of like form of therapy. Like for instance, like the thing that for instance I would really hate is the whole idea of like a camping trip, where you go together with a group of people and a therapist, and for me that's not my thing. Like if I would like to go to therapy,
Same.
I would rather
I've been there a bunch of times, and that's not really what I want to do.
Yeah, like I would rather just like chill. I don't want to get my hands dirty and like go like camping and stuff. Like to me that's a bit corny. But there's a lot of people that are like more active, that are more like out there, whatever, or people that are really in their shell and they just need to get out of that shell. And maybe for these people, it's better to get this kind of exposure to other people that maybe are in a similar boat, with someone that is guiding them, and they have like a more closer relationship for a period of like 1 or 2 weeks. Maybe that's perfect for these people.
Everyone needs different things. And so even if you're like the best therapist in the world and you have the best technique in the world, some clients just aren't going to work for you. They're going to need something different from someone else. And that's totally fine and somewhat expected. Part of my informed consent process with people is like, if we don't get along and like we don't have a good relationship, like this isn't going to work. So I need you to tell me that. So I usually will ask people how they feel about me, how they feel about the last 60 minutes, what those things. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's fine. And part of my job will then be to help you find someone that does work for who you are. And that's totally fine to me.
No hard feelings.
No, because I need you. So I've been to therapy as a therapist. I think if you are a therapist, I think should be a requirement in every field. It's not in social work, but I think it should be that you go to get therapy. And it's very, very different being in the other seat in that room. It's a totally, totally different fucking dynamic there. It is super important, I think, as a therapist to experience for just you look at the therapist as someone who, sometimes you don't like the things that they say. So one time I had a therapist, and he knew I was a therapist, and so he would say, "Well, you know this, like you're a therapist too." And sometimes I didn't, and I was like, "Fuck you!" Don't be a fucking asshole. Like, just tell me what you. Why am I? Just tell me. You don't need to answer. Give me a fucking quiz. Just tell me what you want me to say. And I didn't necessarily say this to him because I didn't feel comfortable doing so, and that wasn't a part of our process necessarily. And I probably didn't, get as much out of that therapy as I could have if I were honest about it.
But that's like a really weird thing where a therapist tells another therapist, well, you should know about that.
Well, he didn't mean it. It was in the most innocent way possible. He didn't mean to do this. He wasn't trying to be like a prick. He was actually complimenting me, essentially saying I was good, but I wasn't. And so it made me feel like really insecure because I was like, I don't know the answer to this question. It made me feel shitty, and I should have said that and been like, hey, dude, can you not do that because it makes me feel shitty? But I didn't because I was uncomfortable in the relationship, and that wasn't the way he did therapy. I didn't feel like that was something that was comfortable enough to do, I guess. But I think it's very important to do that thing. So if you get upset at someone, and I think the same as a therapist. If a client's pissing me off, I need to set a boundary. So if you continually come late, I need to tell you, like, hey, man, like this time is important. Like, there's people that are waiting in line essentially for therapy, and if you don't want to take this seriously, like, I'd really appreciate if you came on time. This is important to me. I think you need to make this important to you also. Like, if you want to stop, that's fine. Like, it's obviously you have complete determination whether you want to do this or not. But if we're gonna do it, like, I would appreciate it if we both took this seriously.
Like, I respect your time, but you have to also respect my time.
Oh yeah, I like your time. Like, that's what I say to them. This is your time. But like, you got to come here, and that's you got to actually do that part at least.
Are there certain? I mean, I bet there's also like certain requirements that you like give your clients, right? Like, or like certain things that is better to do.
No.
No.
So, because it's different for every person. So how do I know? So what worked for me, I don't know if it's going to work for you. So what I can do is sometimes I'll tell people like, hey, here's some things that work for other people. I don't know if this is going to work for you. And I always tell them that everything we do in here and talk about in here, it's an experiment because we don't know. So we're going to think of it as an experiment and not as that's for multiple reasons. One, to get them willing to try something new, and then two, for them, if they fail at it, it's not a failure. It's you were experimenting on something and it didn't work out because it's not going to work out all the time, and that's totally fine. Or in the aspect of that is that I don't know what's best for people. What I'm trying to talk to them about is like I'm trying to say like, do you think this behavior is helping you or do you think it's hurting you? I'm really trying to like think through their problems and if the way they act or if they get pulled by their emotions in a certain direction and they you do this all the time. You get upset or angry and you act those things out in certain ways that when you look back upon you're like, fuck man, like I wish I didn't say that or I didn't need to do that rude thing to someone or be mean to them. And so and you can't control the angry thought, but what in therapy, the way I do it, what we encourage you to do and think about is because you can't necessarily control your thoughts. They just pop into your fucking head. But what you can get better at is not being consumed by them and having them just like make you act out all kinds of things when you could just do other things. You don't always have to, you can have a strong craving to go eat some fucking cookies. You don't have to eat the cookies. And so, what I can't do for you is change the way you think because we kind of can, but thoughts pop in your head without your consent. What we're trying to teach you how to do, not necessarily is change your thoughts, because I don't know how to change them. I don't think I should be telling you how to do those things. How do you deal with the problems that you actually have. So if you have a bad emotion, rather than trying to do something to get rid of it, just you can sit with it and it's okay. Like you don't have to do extreme things that don't seem to be helpful to you to manage your own thoughts. When you're angry, you don't have to yell at your spouse. You can calmly say like, hey, I feel really upset that you didn't you were away for the weekend and you didn't call me and it really upset me. I feel upset. And you can show emotion, but I don't need to be an asshole to you and not talk to you when you get home and like stomp around the house.
Yeah, that's something that, for instance, like in Italian family, I mean, I live in an Italian family, and for instance, like Italians are super passionate, but sometimes it's for the worst ever, because, for instance, like my dad has or actually my mother too, like I am myself like that. We have this talent of being super fucking bitchy if we have like a bad temper. Like a really bad like mood that day. Like we as a collective, as a family, can all be really passive aggressive, really really bitchy at each other. You know, it's never to an extreme, but it does happen. And like one thing that I find interesting is that like this thing that you mentioned with like you don't have to eat the cookies. I actually have a problem with like compulsive like eating, you know, where it's like you know, I get like this craving, and then I search around the house, find a big ass fucking chocolate bar, eat it all, and
Nice.
and it happens too much. But you know what, like the one time where I downloaded this fucking an app where you just track your calories.
Yo, it works, man.
Dude,
I used to be a fat kid too, and now I'm fucking have a six pack.
like
That's what changed it.
that's actually inspiration that I need. Like I need to start doing this again, because the one time where this like super authoritarian fascistic bullshit works, it's with that stuff, calorie tracking. You know, because then I'm like, I met my goal for today. I can't eat anything, so that's it. I just have to deal with that. So I guess I just have to eat more cool stuff tomorrow. Or hey, if I eat less chocolate, I can eat more stuff throughout the day that is better for me, that is gonna satiate me, that is gonna be, I'm gonna feel good about it, and I'm not gonna feel like a fat piece of shit.
So in which let me tell you, give you a tip. What you have to do, you said everything correct, but what you have to do with that food that you do eat, you got to find things that are like, you know, like they're 80% is good. So like example, like, you know, have some like pasta alternatives. It's not as good as fucking pasta, but like it's good enough and it's made out of vegetables, so it doesn't add any calories to things.
And some alternatives are really fucking good.
Yeah, you can find once you start eating alternatives. I'm at the point in my life where I don't want greasy shit anymore. I like my alternatives because I feel healthy and I'm not fat, and they taste good enough for me that they seem like a treat. Like my wife and I are always talking about. Like my wife's a really good cook, and she likes to eat very, very healthy, and she's a great cook. So it's like I don't feel like I'm being punished. I'm like, this is just delicious. Like I'm happy I'm eating these things because they taste good, and then you know. You make some fucking you still eat cookies, but if you generally eat some healthy stuff, there's room for cookies in your calorie counter. Because if that shit goes red, I'm gonna lose my motherfucking mind. Like that's all that I needed is that fucking calorie number turned red, and I was very honest with it because I was telling myself, like, who am I lying to? Like my body's gonna get fucking fat. Like who cares about this fucking number? Like there's no reason to be dishonest. So I just yell at myself. So I'd always have that temptation. I'm like, oh, I just ate one cookie. I'm not gonna put it in there. Like fuck it. And I'm like, who am I lying to? I'm lying to myself. It's so fucking dumb. But if that shit turned red, oh, I was so upset. It works.
This is honestly like, man. Do you like use a specific app?
It's called MyFitnessPal. Yeah.
Okay. I use Chronometer, but I might try out MyFitnessPal because
So, but
Chronometer
this is what
was.
you get, if you want to be serious about it. You gotta buy that food scale.
Have one.
Yeah, I love
Have
it.
one. It's good.
It's also it also tickles like the video game addict in me. So it's like fun to put it in there. It's like, you know, a management game. By the end, end of the week, I get to look at all the calories and see the numbers go up and down. It's fun.
Yeah, the gamification aspect is cool. Also, like, okay, like one thing that I find funny, I have like these like weird like periods. Maybe you know about something like that in your life too, but like for instance, like for me, it's like I have these like bursts of like obsession about things, and this is actually like how most of my video productions go. Like, for instance, the last documentary film I made, which is about Yeonmi Park in North Korea and stuff, there was 4 months of obsession, just constantly looking up stuff, writing stuff, only thinking about that, only talking about that, whatever. Then I make it, it's released, and basically just 2 weeks of doing fucking nothing. That's actually the time where I joined the mrgirl server and like started talking to everyone, stuff over chat. But you know, like that's for me like a process, like complete immersion, obsession, and then it goes back into doing nothing. And for me, like one thing that I noticed, like when it comes to like sports, like I don't like this mindset that people have where it's like, oh, like in German we have a way of saying which is called Sport ist Mord, which means sports is murder or something. Like it makes more sense in German because it rhymes. But like actually like when I went to the gym and like I did like weightlifting and stuff, I liked it. I did actually like it. And for a while I was really dedicated. But then I guess this like period of interest kind of just crashed, and then I just didn't do it anymore, you know? And the fucking calorie tracking, that stopped because I got too lazy.
So that's happened to me too. But once you do, at least for me, once I've done it enough, I can kind of estimate it well enough in my head. But I mean, you just sound like a Vata to me.
I'm just a Vata.
Yeah, it just sounds like your interest all over the place. No, I think, but again, this is why I think the Vata thing is not that bad and it's useful, because that was a way to describe like people with that percent, like you go hard on things and you need to be focused, but like you can't stick to anything long for one time. Yeah, I have that all the time. I'm super obsessive about things. Like I might never code in Mr. Discord again in like 2 weeks and just never look back because I'm not fucking interested in it. You guys aren't interesting to me anymore. I'm gonna go do something else. I do it all the time with communities and video games and stuff like this. But you know what Dr. K is correct about is okay. That is kind of who I am, and I kind of just accept. I really understand that that's kind of how I am. It's how I'm at my happiest. And okay, well, I can just kind of do my life that way and just do short bursts of things, and they can all have somewhat, like even with psychology and therapy, I'll go for 2 months and I'll read like 3 or 4 books, and I'll go for like 6 months and I don't fucking read anything. I just fucking play video games, and that's who I am, and it's the best that I can do. There are some people that can hyper focus on things. That's not me, and I don't operate well when I try to force myself into doing those things. Like the gym stuff, I work out pretty. For the last 3 years, I lift weights like 3-4 times a week, but I just do what I can, and sometimes I'm not in the mood to do the same thing, and I have to switch it up. And I need to figure out, all right, I used to use resistance bands. All right, I need to buy dumbbells. I need to do calisthenic things today. I just can't do the same shit over and over again every fucking day.
Yeah, actually, when I think about it, like I do have this with video games, for instance, like where there's like a period where I get deep into Dota, or I get deep into fighting games like Tekken and Street Fighter. And then, like now, for instance, I fucking hate. I hate the idea of booting up Tekken.
Yeah,
I just hate everything about this, But now I play hardcore FPS games. Yep. But I know next month I'm gonna play something else entirely again. Like it's always the cycle. This
is what it is to me. Like at least with video games specifically, it's like it's exciting. It's there's something new. There's something to learn. There's a challenge. And then you get to a point where it's like, okay, I kind of did this, and now I'm bored. And I need to go do something else. And some people just can fucking hyper focus on things, and like they don't lose that excitement and the challenge, and there's the next level of shit. I just you get bored of things, and I think that's fine. I think people are always trying to like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I focus on this one thing forever? So that's fucking weird. Like Michael Jordan's a weirdo. Like he is hyper focused on being the best basketball player ever. Like that's not normal that people do that. And I think often people look at people that are like at the tops of fields and they're like, well, they did that, so like I should be able to I should be Jordan Peterson and have read like 7 trillion fucking books in my life. Nope. Like that would be cool. I would love to be as well read as that guy, but that's just not gonna fucking happen. I want to shitpost on Discord. Like I'm not gonna, I'm not like it's not who I am, but I can do the best I can. And I think what people need to figure out is, it would always, when I would work in special education, what I would tell everyone is what we're trying to do is, with each one of these kids have a potential, and we want to do our best to get to them as close to that potential that that individual has as we possibly can. And I think that's what you should do with yourself, is you try to be the best version of yourself that you can, and understand that there are limits, and not feel shitty that you're different from someone else. It's not bad. You're just different. It's okay. Some people are retarded.
And just to clarify,
some people are really strong.
Just to clarify, this is not therapy.
I hope not.
This is not therapy.
I mean, this is the thing. No, this is not therapy, but it has similar elements where I am trying to be as authentic as I possibly can be. But
yeah, but again, like there's like this. But this is like but this is like the thing that's like funny, right? Like where you know, this is exactly like what my problem is with the Mr. Girl stuff. You know, again, like now we're talking about certain subjects which you know, in some way might be having to do you know, with therapy or with like medical advice or something, or you know, I have a certain addiction. My addiction is sugar. How do you deal with that? Now you gave me the tip. Oh yeah, calorie counting. That worked for me. And you know, I go working on stuff. And then you know, it's like, now we're getting into like these like, now the discussion like around the topic of therapy is like, what advice can a qualified person give and what can't they do? And for me, it's kind of weird like to basically like spin it in this way where a qualified person or someone that is more qualified than someone has less to say than someone that is completely unqualified and should just not open his mouth about something.
That is why I'm on the Mr. Girl fucking Discord in the first place, because I like watching streamers when I'm playing video games in the background, and I watch streamers speak with absolute authority and certainty on mental health and say the most retarded things in the world. And it fucking drove me crazy. So again, I see Dr. K and I'm like, all right, yo, like he's giving good psychological advice. He's decently researched on things. I think he does a decent job, especially in the academic kind of videos that he does. Like, I'm like, thank God, like at least he has an idea what the fuck he's talking about. But so the challenge is that there are boundaries that he again has to abide by. So it's like, on one hand, I want him to be doing things. I want more people to be doing. I also like, what's the erudite that's on Destiny's thing a couple of times. I think she does a great job of talking about psychology. Then you want people like that because she's very well read. She's intelligent. She speaks on it clearly. You want people to be trying to do these things, because, at least in my opinion, because I think there's a huge need for mental health information out there, good mental health information. And there's so many retard streamers. And so it drives me a bit crazy when everyone speaks with authority. But I get that there are liabilities. And I get that there are ethical issues. And one of the interesting questions that I think people have gone back and forth on is, how much informed consent can you give? And like, let's say the Dr. K thing. So if I want to talk to someone, and I want to talk to you, you ask me about, like, let's say you ask me a problem that you want to talk about in your life, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm happy to listen to you. Like, I'm not your therapist. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to be the responsibilities I'm not taking here. But like, if you want to talk to me, like, I'm going to listen to you as a guy. And like, I've tried to explain, like, I may do things like just like I do in therapy, because like I genuinely care about you. There's a lot of, again, similar elements to therapy, but the issue is informing the person, like, hey, I don't have any like responsibility here necessarily. And if there's certain places that are getting like dangerous clinically, then I do start to have responsibility. So if you start telling me you're going to kill yourself, like, okay, I all of a sudden now have a responsibility. Like, so I've thought about this. Like, if someone on fucking a VC call starts telling them they're going to kill themselves, I'm going to go into therapy mode and try to figure out where he lives, and so I can call the police to have someone,
That's the scariest thing that can happen.
So the suicide is freaky.
I did have that experience, and it was a fucking adventure, I tell you. Like someone basically in a Discord server was like writing about, they're gonna go in a park and they're gonna kill themselves, right? And then there were some people that were like, well, can't do anything, don't know where they live, don't know who they are, whatever, and that was like a day where like I and like some other people from Discord, like we did our best, and like in finding out who that person is. We got a picture of that person's face. We knew the name, where they lived, and what city, and like we managed to find the dogs like through context, like from this guy's friend list, and call the police on him, and it worked. You know, it actually worked. You know, and the thing is, like, I mean, me and like the other retards from that Discord, we were just randos, and we managed to do that. And then when I saw like Dr. K friends like talk to, you know, this one chick that, you know, said, I try to I want to kill myself all the time, but people don't let me, you know? And then he's just talking to her, and this is, for instance, like where I would have been, okay, cut it short now. This is bad.
So that would be kind of, if it were me, I would do something like this, I would absolutely have some kind of thing like, hey, again, this would be part of this informed consent in the beginning, is that like, hey, if you bring up suicide, we're gonna you know, end the conversation. You know, not abruptly. We're just gonna, you know, I'm gonna steer it towards the end, because you need to make sure that you get the appropriate help. And being on stream talking about your suicide is, again, I don't know if it's bad. I honestly don't know, but it seems very risky to me, and I don't think it's appropriate to put your client in such an unknown situation, especially when confidentiality and all this stuff. And is this one of the issues with informed consent? I was trying to say, I don't even know if I did, is that are these people mentally capable to, you know, consent to this thing, because we don't necessarily know what it is.
And I guess again it's a context thing, because when when someone talks about their experience with like suicidal thoughts and like how they handled like, you know, suicide, it's like talking about depression or talking about anxiety, where it's like, I had this experience, this is what happened to me, this is what I tried to inflict on myself, and this is how I got out of it. Or maybe I'm still dealing with this, but, you know, I'm doing XYZ to, you know, counteract that. You can, I think you can have a discussion, but then when you go into I am trying to, but no one lets me, that is at that point, that's a cry for help.
It's more than a cry for help. So what you would need to do is a suicide assessment. I think this is where this gets into murky territory, and I actually don't necessarily know the 100% the ethics here. I'd have to look it up, but I would think, even again, let's say this is not therapy at all.
Yeah.
But he's a doctor in front of someone that's actively suicidal, so like certain things he needs to do in those moments because he holds a licensure. It's like if you're in the States at least, if you are first aid certified and someone is injured in front of you and you just don't fucking do anything, you can get sued. Yeah. Because you have a responsibility by taking this class and getting this licensure, and it affords you responsibility, so you have responsibilities when shit arises. And so, when someone says something like, I saw that video, it was uncomfortable, and I would have to watch it again to really, really listen to exactly what she said. But she's essentially saying, I'm trying to kill myself, and only because there are people in this home, I'm not killing myself. I would want to assess that as, are you talking about like when you get off camera right now? Like you would just go kill yourself right now? And then you would ask, do you have a plan? How would you do that? And these different elements add a different risk factor to this. So, but at a certain point, if someone's actively suicidal, they have a plan, and they have a means to that plan, I can't leave them by themselves. Like that, I then have an ethical responsibility, essentially, if I assess the risk too high, to use the authority that's given to me to involuntarily hospitalize them so that they don't kill themselves.
But I guess the caveat is that this doesn't go across state lines, right? Or does it go across state lines?
That's one of these messy things, is that, no, technically, I am not licensed outside of my state. And
but you could call the police on that person, right? And basically say, look, I'm concerned for that person.
Yeah, you're just you're another citizen, essentially, and you have to, report out to the people that can do this. So I couldn't fill out that paperwork in another state, but the police can also fill out that paperwork. You don't have to be, you can be a police officer, you can be a social worker, you can be a psychologist. There's several different professions that can fill out the paperwork to have someone emergency petition to be hospitalized. But yeah, you have to have some form of those things. So it wouldn't have to be me. I could call the police and they could do it. No, they don't ever want to do it. Even when I fill out the paperwork, they're fucking a pain in the ass and won't take the person. But they can do it if they really wanted to. And it was bad enough.
Yeah, and like
and I don't know the ethics code specifically. I would have to read it. But I think he has an ethical duty as a licensed clinician when someone's actively suicidal in front of you to do the correct thing, no matter who it is.
And
So-
I guess like one thing that
I was
that
gonna-
yeah.
I was going to tell you something. Is it possible to tell you this now and possibly not have this included in the interview?
Sure.
Because it's very personal.
Yeah. So cut.
Yeah.
But the thing I wonder about with Dr. K's situation is, you have like really bad clips where he says some really stupid shit, like talking to a suicidal person about believing in reincarnation and stuff.
I think that's the worst. The worst thing that he did was tell Reckful he would love him for 2 years. That was so.
That was bad.
But it was so bad to me because it was so clinically inappropriate. Like, that was such a horrible cross of the boundary. You don't fucking say that to someone. You don't know where you're going to be in a year. Don't promise something you can't deliver on as a clinician. I think it was highly inappropriate that he did. I couldn't believe that he did. Again, I know he's not his therapist, but he knows better as a therapist. You can't promise someone with what Reckful's doing. It was just highly immoral that he did that. I get it. He said he got emotionally overwhelmed. I generally take people at their face value. He may be lying, whatever, but I know that was highly retarded. But I think your point is there's a lot of other aspects of him, thousands of hours of stream, that he's generally doing good things.
And okay, and this is the thing, like, I know if Mr. Girl watched this, which is highly unlikely, I don't think he's gonna watch this, but the thing that I'm not even alluding to a net good kind of argument, because I myself agree with Mr. Girl. The net positive thing is a bad argument because, again, like, if you do actually like directly take his example, if you're a surgeon and you treat and like you do your work correctly on 10,000 children that they have to do brain surgery on.
I hear that. So this is why my argument against that thing is that, so the brain thing is a very extreme example.
It is.
It's extreme, and you fucking kill someone, and like or you rape someone, whatever the fucking example is. It's
Exactly.
super extreme. So, and what would you do in an extreme situation? Well, you should have your fucking license revoked when you do some extreme shit. I don't think what Dr. K did, if he did something, is that extreme. And an ethics board is not there to punish you in a way that's like, I'm going to steal your license, and that's our goal here, is to take away bad people. And I mean, it is in some sense, but that's if they can remedy the situation. And so I've been a part of an ethics complaint before, and it was me complaining against someone else. The goal, I wasn't trying to get this girl's license revoked. It is a very simple thing. You have to keep up-to-date paperwork as part of our ethics code. For obvious reasons, is that if you didn't write it down and it didn't happen, and it fucks over the client and the company, and you just can't do that. So there's ethical, codes to keep appropriate paperwork. But the goal wasn't to get her to not be able to be a social worker anymore. It was for her to get the fucking paperwork in, and she wouldn't through normal means. So I told her, I was like, listen, if you don't, before you leave, you can leave to a new job. That's fine. You have plenty of time to get this paperwork in. And if you don't, you have to get this done. You were responsible for this. You did clinical sessions. You have to write the notes. But my goal is not to punish her. And that's, again, this is where I thought Mr. Girl is super interesting. I still think he's super interesting. I think that I really find fascinating about him, and I like a lot of what he says. There's a malicious side to this that it seems very personal. And I think the whole net good I don't care about the net good necessarily of the argument. I don't think that's the argument. It's fine. Maybe he did violate an ethical thing. I want Dr. K to be better. And I don't feel that for Mr. Girl at all. It seems like I just want to, what did he say in Discord? I want to dismantle him. It's like what if he's, 95% good, and I agree with you, that 5% is bad. You're raping some sleeping child. It's a terrible thing. But what if it's not so extreme and we can get the person to stop raping the kid, metaphorically? And when it's so extreme, that would be the best of all situations. So
and this is, by the way, also this is also a thing why I love the for instance the German justice system, because for instance here, when you get in jail as a murderer, the focus is not punishing you. The focus is correcting your behavior and then getting you out of there as soon as possible. If you're this is why people in Germany when they get in jail, they're not treated like animals. They're treated like human beings for the most part. Except if you're so fucking crazy that you keep wanting to rape and kill and whatever people.
So I love human beings, and even human beings that do awful things, I have a ton of empathy for them, because most of the times, I think all the times, this is how I tell it to myself. If let's say you're this horrible murderer, rapist, all this shit, and I said, hey,
Ted Bundy.
yeah, Ted Bundy. I think some people are truly like just wouldn't take this pill, but most people, if like you had a really fucked up life and now you're in jail for the rest of your life, would you take this pill to come out without all of these challenges and these things that make you either violent or criminality of those things? The overwhelming majority of people would be like, fuck yeah, like I don't want to be fucking dumb and be a criminal. Like I would love to have been a lawyer, or I would have loved to have a normal upbringing where didn't see violence all the time that fucked me up and all this stuff. I think people, so I generally I care for them, and even if they've done terrible things, there's still a human being behind there that is there despite the horrible thing that they've done. But sometimes, like you said, there's some real fucked up people. You got to keep them away from society. So for most people, I think we should be trying to help them. Some people, I can't necessarily even help you. I just need to like not try to torture you. But you can't be near anyone because you're too fucked up. And like I've worked with those people. I still care about them, but you're so detrimental to other human beings that I can't have you near anyone. Sorry.
And yeah, Ted Bundy is a perfect example actually, because that guy,
nope.
like he, like the most fascinating thing for me, like, and again, like when you're a layperson and you have no clue about psychology, right? It's honestly fucking earth shattering, like worldview shattering, to find out that Ted Bundy was normal. Like he wasn't a psychopath. He was a sadist. That means he needs to feel empathy to enjoy what he does. Then he
so I don't know
grew up in a stable home.
So he had this urge to need to hurt people because he like enjoyed, like, explain that to me. I don't know much about Ted Bundy.
Okay, Ted Bundy basically was a sadist. He liked to rape and kill women.
Okay.
It was his thing. It was his hobby, basically, to put it very nonchalantly. And from what I understand, being a sadist or being a masochist, but basically you need to have a feeling of empathy. You need to empathize with people, because if you're a sadist, you relish in the fact that someone else is suffering, while a psychopath doesn't understand what other people feel. So there's that element to Ted Bundy, and another element is that he didn't grow up in a troubled household, as far as we know. As far as we know, he wasn't abused. As far as we know, that shit didn't happen. So somehow he got into this thing, and it mutated into becoming a serial rapist and killer.
Yep. People with all kinds of weird urges, and it fucks them up really bad. It's not using that one, but there's people have lots of weird urges. Exactly,
and the thing is this: like Ted Bundy, was that guy unsalvageable? I think he was. Like he was an actual monster.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then when you look at other people, like for instance, a rapper like TK. I don't know if you know about TK, but basically that guy, he was involved, like heavily involved in criminal life. I think he was like 17 or 16. Then he got into a murder trial because he or someone else in his group killed someone. Then he cut off the tracking device, like for house arrest, went on a run. I think he killed someone, stole people's stuff, went to another state, made a rap track called The Race, where he's talking about his murder trial, whatever, and that's basically wild. Snitching on himself. And now he sits in jail for 40 plus years. And like, what I am thinking is, this guy grew up in a fucked up environment, was around fucked up people, did fucked up shit, but he's 17. And we're locking him up for 45 years or more,
Well, it's again, I can have empathy for that person, and imagine in his position how sad you would be. Like I can feel that, and like I can get to that perspective. But I also feel like, yeah, this, like, the amount of cost that it would take society to possibly reform this guy. I mean, possibly you can, and possibly we don't have the ability to do that. The amount of trauma that maybe that kid grew up around. So fuck it. Like, it's I think there's important to have at some level. I don't want to punish you. I want to, you can go to a somewhat nice place, but you have to be away from everyone else because you're just too broken and fucked. You're just too violent to other human beings. That's my issue. like drug crimes, I think drug law is so fucked, and if we're gonna mandate things, we should mandate treatment, not fucking jail time for
Yeah.
fucking drug crimes. It drives me crazy.
And like, to bring it back to the Dr. K stuff, like, what did Dr. K do? Did he murder someone with intention, or kill someone with intention?
Clearly no.
I'm putting with intention intentionally in there, because there's people that say that he killed Reckful. I'm here to say, even if he did kill him, it was not intentional, and it was 100% an accident.
If
that is the case,
for you to have believed that he did this intentionally, would have to you would have to. I don't think I'm that. Maybe there are people that are that good with human psychology that could lead people down that road in an awful way without seeming like you're doing it. And so, like, it's not just like being an asshole to someone and having them kill themselves. Like, you're trying to be as helpful as possible. You make one mistake, and this is the perfect moment to kill this asshole. Like, it's just it's such an outrageous story to me, when it's so much simpler that, like, yeah, he seems like a guy who, like, really cares. He's very emotional. He's super passionate. And he got carried away and fucked up. And he fucked up really badly in a way that may have hurt someone. But I don't know. I don't know Reckful. And this is, as someone that is a therapist, one thing I've learned about things is I always ask people in Discord a lot, and I'm not trying to be all like, I don't know what you would even call it, but like using the Socratic method. Like, how do you know that? People make so many claims, and I'm like, life's super complicated. Like, how do you know that this was actually the thing that killed Reckful? Like, you don't. You feel like it is, and like you find a bunch of evidence that confirms the feeling that you have that, like, there's something kind of weird here. I think it did something wrong. Most people, like, they don't actually know what he did. And because we don't know so much about the story. We don't know Reckful's thoughts. We don't know what Dr. K necessarily meant to Reckful. Maybe he was a super important person in his life. I actually don't know. And maybe that mistake that we are, like, analyzing with such criticality was nothing, because they talked about it later. And so sometimes, like, this is something that when I worked at the school, I would have to restrain kids. So you think, like, someone's gonna be real pissed at you after I like hold them down to the floor. They're between my legs. It's, like, very uncomfortable. But we talk about it afterwards, and we process it, and we're like, hey man, like, I know that was super uncomfortable, and we talk about it for a second, and it didn't impact our relationship. You think it would, but it very often didn't. And sometimes it did, but very often by processing, it didn't necessarily. So there's so much that I don't know about the situation. There are conversations that happen not on camera, seem to be a lot. And so I think there's, like, so much speculation when, like, we have no fucking idea, and these guys probably talked for hours off of stream. And so we're just missing all of that and making really, really strong claims, I think, from an emotional place.
It could be that officially, Dr. K cut ties, but then that was the official public relationship that he had with Reckful. And actually, like, since Dr. K, apparently, according to Mr. Girl's anonymous source, which is unverifiable and is a completely anecdotal claim, that source said that Dr. K approached them and said to not include Dr. K in basically accounts like of, like, people with, like, last contact that Reckful had and stuff. I mean, that tends to show more that Dr. K did actually try to uphold his promise, maybe. But again, like that's only speculation on our side, on their side. And yeah, I completely agree. Like basically speculating over stuff that we can't possibly know about. It's not really productive.
That's at least what I've tried to be somewhat consistent with on the servers. My position is, like, you guys just don't know. Like, we can have our opinions, and I have my opinion. I have what my perception of the situation is, and it's fun to talk about. But I think we often act like those. That hour and a half that Max put together on the fucking video he made, or just all the streams all together, like, that is all of the interaction that there was. It's not. It's maybe half of it. And so it's like we're making this certain conclusion with maybe half the information, maybe even less.
And it's even less than half, because, like, you have to keep in mind, like, he didn't only use Reckful clips, he also used clips from other streams. But what my argument would be, and again, it's not a net good argument, but my argument is, everyone fucks up in anything. You fucked up, I fucked up in our, like, ways, like, how we handle certain stuff. For instance, like, when it comes to editing, in the documentary that I made, I recorded myself with my camera, and I was negligent to the fact that my camera has horrible microphones, So I had to ADR the entire production. And that was, for instance, a fuck up. I learned from it. Now I'm talking into a decent microphone. This one right here, So it's I learned from that. Dr. K, the compilation of clips that Mr. Girl put up for the documentary and used it in his expose. That is maybe an hour plus worth of Dr. K fuck ups. But then we have
it's a highlight reel.
Potentially hundreds of hours of Dr. K being decent at what he does, or good, or whatever, having good, beneficial, amazing conversation. And the thing is this, from the people, that he sampled these really horrible clips from, I mean, Wreckful, he came back to the show he talked to Dr. K 6 times on stream.
So I have only watched a bit of the Wreckful stuff with Actually, but it's very clear to me, and this is just my opinion, and people can. I feel like I always sound arrogant when I say this, but this is just the truth. I've sat down and talked to people in a really deep, profound way for thousands of hours, trying to understand what they feel and these things. And to me, just as that's kind of what I do. My perception of the two of them, they seem to genuinely care about each other. I don't. This weird hidden thing. They seem to be a very positive relationship, and you can deeply care about someone. I deeply care about my wife. Had a huge fucking fight last night. We're saying mean shit to each other, and then you make up. It's a mistake. Is it a bad mistake? Yeah, I really do think it was a bad mistake, and he really should have known better.
Oh yeah.
But again, we're making such certain claims that he is this horrible, abusive, terrible, sadistic person, and I think some of it is. That's a bad clip. Me as a therapist agrees that is a bad clip, but I think people are missing, and it worries me that again, there's no way to say this without sounding arrogant, but you don't know unless you've done this thing how these situations kind of happen sometimes, and you do make absolute mistakes, and you have to correct those mistakes. That's your responsibility to do those things. It happens. But should we be fired over these things? Should you lose 8 years of education and all of the positive things you've done because you've made one mistake? Well, we already don't have enough mental health professionals as is. There's a huge shortage right now. And that's a huge fucking problem. And again, with the healthy gamer stuff, the coaching stuff, I'm a huge fan of this. And I know a lot of people are well, they need to go to actual therapists. Well, guess what? There's not enough actual therapists. And guess what? I would imagine a lot of these people, 2 issues. One, they probably wouldn't be going to therapy. They're fucking fat fucks, sit behind their computer all goddamn day on Discord, and they don't leave their house. They're not going to go talk to another human being. They might talk to this gamer guy that can relate to them a little bit. They're not going to talk to some old fuck therapist, or that they're not going to pay $150 an hour to do this. So you're going to get a population of people that you would never reach necessarily, probably, by traditional therapy. And I think a lot of people. This is why I again, Discord's been so much fun to me. It's my obsession right now. Is people talk to one another, and there's such a value in people talking to one another, and even just a coaching perspective. I don't know how they're trained, so this is complete speculation for me, but the basic premise of I bet this coach is focused on the other person, and I bet they're focused on helping this other person in some way. And just to talk to someone that was willing to listen to you, is on your side, I think is extremely valuable, and maybe upwards of 50+% of therapy. That's kind of all that it is. The human-to-human interaction is so vital. There's this theory called polyvagal theory, where a lot of mental health issues stem from your nervous system. And one of the things that therapy does is, by me being calm and acting towards you in a manner of love, in a sense, I'm calming your nervous system down at a biological level. And so, you don't need to necessarily be a trained person. A friend can do that. Just someone that's on your side and willing to listen to you. So I see this as, this is a wonderful thing that I think he's trying to do, and it's so needed. And the other thing that I think about often is people that are pioneering and trailblazing, they're going to fuck up even more because they're charting uncharted territories. So I certainly have a bias, and I admire that about Dr. K, honestly, because I don't have the balls to do that. I love talking to you guys on Discord and stuff about this, and I think I'm a decent speaker about it, but I would never dare show my face. And, I have 2 little kids, and the internet's a mean place. There's Mr. Girls out there. And, I'm not going to put my family at risk because in some ways I'm a fucking coward. Or not necessarily that, but, my family's more important to me than becoming an online personality. But so, and I do my own thing my own way. But as Dr. K, I'm like, I respect that. Like, he has 2 little kids, he has a family, and he's willing to do this thing that I think again, this is my perception, that he believes in genuinely. A lot of people could just say, like, our boy Krim, it's like, no, you're just delusional, and he's a fucking monster abuser, and you're an abuser too, so that's why you don't see it. I get it.
He is a fascist abuser, piece of human garbage trash.
I actually get I get where he's coming from. It's just like, I just disagree with you, and that's fine. I just think you're wrong. Like, I understand. Like, I'm not trying to.
Krim,
there's no argument.
I love Krim with all my heart, in every way you can imagine love to mean. In every single way, I love Krim. But I do understand that he is, like, you look up the word of authority, and then you read up anti-authoritarian. It's just a picture of Krim's profile picture. Okay? Like that's it. Like that's him. He has such a hate boner for authority and for people taking away control. I hope I'm not pretending to psychoanalyze, but this is basically what I picked up from him. He just really hates the concept of authority and people telling him what is best for him. And I guess that's why a therapist is abusive to him, because he doesn't want someone to.
And so this is why I think Krim's wrong, is that I don't think a good therapist tells you what to do. I think that is the absolute wrong way to conceptualize what I'm doing in therapy. I'm working with someone, and so, like, I might ask you a question. I'm like, hey, how's that working out for you? So if your strategy to manage your anxiety, let's say, is drinking a whole bunch of alcohol. And so, we'll be honest about it. Like, okay, it works in the short term, reduces in the moment, but is this working for you in the long term towards the goals that you want to achieve in your life? And if that person's like, they get to answer that question. I don't know what the fucking answer to that question is. And maybe I can think I do, and maybe I even do, but when I do therapy, they get to answer that question. So I have a client who is off of heroin, meth, all the really hard drugs. But he still smokes pot all the time, and he uses it to regulate himself. And so we ask him, like, hey, I guess I do things different than AA. I'm like, is this working for you? And it is right now. And so it's like, for me to say, like, hey, you need to get off this, I don't know if that would be best for him. So I genuinely don't know if he can regulate himself without substances. And I'd rather him smoking weed than doing fucking meth and heroin and shit. So
I know for myself, I did work for 6 months at an old folks home as like, I guess like a nurse helper kind of thing. I guess an assistant caretaker, I guess, And that job for me was super, like, emotionally so bad. I'm really empathetic. And for me, like, a thing that, like, really, like, killed me was basically seeing suffering every day. And this is where I changed my perception on death a lot, because it always sounds so fucking bad when I bring this up, but it's always like, there were these people that were highly demented, that were fucked in every way possible. I knew that this is maybe the last month I see them, and every day I see them, I just think to myself, please just die already. Please let this suffering end. This is horrible. And dude, the thing is this: if I didn't smoke cigars before work and after work, I don't know how I could have coped with that situation. Honestly, I don't know how I could have coped with that.
So a lot of what I'm talking about is not just like, I want to make it clear these aren't Charlie's thoughts. There's a lot of what I'm getting from is something called acceptance commitment therapy that I'm reading currently. So it's heavily influencing a lot of things I'm saying. So if anyone wants to look that up, it's very cool. But yeah, it's like, most things that we do are a form of emotional control. We play video games to control our emotions because, I don't want to think about shit. I don't want to play Dota. And I'm fucking trying to last hit. I can't think about things. You can't. Your attention is focused on a game rather than your attention being focused on unpleasant emotions. So we eat to do that. Almost everything that we do in life is in some form to regulate our emotions. And so what you need to look at is, admit, sometimes these things work pretty well. And that's great. Keep doing them. You look, do they have short-term effects? No, okay, cool, do them. Do they have long-term effects? Yeah, they have some really bad long-term effects. So, like, something like doing heroin, yeah, you're not going to feel anxiety anymore, bro. but you're gonna fucking be addicted to heroin, and that's way worse for your situation. And you get to,
Yeah.
but there's situations where it's like it is sometimes counterintuitive, where you're like, that's why I'm very careful to say like I don't know. And one of the things I hate, I think general life is people are way too certain about things, and there's way too much unknown out there, especially when it has to do with human beings. We don't fucking know why we do anything. One of my pet peeves when my wife asked me like, "Well, why'd you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just did." Like I don't I can come up with a reasonable story for you if that's what you want me to do. But like sometimes I just fucking did it. Like I didn't think about it. Like it's just I just did, and that's I think generally how there's research. I don't know if you've read Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. It changed my mind about politics, and pretty much what he found through studies is that people do this: they feel something, and after they feel something, they post hoc rationalize why they felt that thing, and that's how they get to their political opinion. So it's everything's emotional, and so that's how we again back to the Ayurveda stuff. It's there's actually some research that there's kind of neuron bundles in the heart area and in the stomach area where you feel anxiety and other emotions, and so can we think of this as here's some additional sensory systems in our body that we used to think our brain was just our brain up top, but can we integrate these or other signals that our bodies are sending us? That's how I view emotions as not. I don't under like the paradigm of positive and negative emotions don't make sense to me. Emotions are just perceptual signals that your body is sending to you that you should pay attention to. There's a lot of really good information. Like anxiety is not a bad thing all the time. Anxiety is there's a fucking bear next to you and you need to fucking run. And anxiety is there to protect you. But sometimes in modern society you're getting anxious about like doing stupid shit and it's not helping you. And so you need to figure out which is which.
Yeah, and for instance, like a thing that I think is going on a lot is there's a lot of like hyperfixation on when it comes to stuff like for instance for instance smoking, like that's the thing that is just a deeply annoying thing to me, like when people like like you tell them, oh yeah, I smoke from time to time, and then they immediately look down on you. But then if you would ask them, oh, do you drink, do you
You eat McDonald's, you fat piece of shit.
Yeah, do you eat McDonald's, you fat piece? Do you bake little cakes, you fat fuck? Then it turns out, oh, they also indulge in the pleasures in life.
They do their own thing.
Yeah, or the thing that always pissed me the fuck off is when I get home from school, dealt with my bullshit in school, so I sit down and play Oblivion the entire day. Then I get shit on by my parents for playing Oblivion. And then they lay down at the fucking sofa and watch Criminal Minds all day.
Yeah, it drives me crazy.
They do the exact same shit.
Not only they do the exact same shit, but it's way more retarded. Video games are way better than sitting in front of TV. At least you're fucking doing something.
It's actually cerebral. It's cerebral.
I learned so much shit through video games that I have definitely not learned through watching stupid ass television. So,
dude, there's people that only know about politics and they have a pretty decent understanding of politics only because of Hearts of Iron 4. Okay, like it's insane.
Just that and what you talked about. Yo, you learned English, motherfucker. Like, yeah, like video games seem to be pretty useful.
Yeah, video games, flash animations about gay ass rape, that shit. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, it means that. That's a cool word. I'm gonna keep it now.
Well, but I mean, your point being is that like we got to kind of accept that people have their different strategies, and it's fine. Like there's so much judgment on these things. And again, the judgment should come from a place again of, in my opinion, of love, of saying like, hey, I want you to do the best thing that's for you because I care about you. Like a good friend, I want what's best for you, and we should talk about some of these things because I'm worried that some of these things are bad for you. And so it's okay to like, I'm concerned for you. And I think that's totally fine, and I can ask those questions seriously. Like I'm concerned, but like you can also be like, "Hey, no, you have it wrong here." I do smoke pot, and it helps me regulate myself. I have some of like I think I've talked to you about this. I have a lot of this is very personal topic because I have a lot of shame, and I know it's not rational. Like our conversation right now, I agree with everything we're saying. I absolutely have shame for smoking weed sometimes to regulate my emotions, and it does. I fucking love my life, dude. Like, I fucking love my life. I love that everything aspect of my life. And I love that 3 days a week I get home from fucking work, working my ass off. and I have 2 kids that I fucking love, and I hang out with them, and I'm a fucking good dad. And then when I get done with all that shit, I get to fucking smoke, play computer games, talk to weird people on Discord. It makes me happy. I get to look forward to it. So all this like work that I'm doing, I have something to look forward to, and it helps me. It is genuinely a helpful thing. But I can also recognize there's side effects to it. Like you can recognize these things, and again, it's kind of that you're doing this calculation ahead. Is like, is this what's good for me? And that's going to change in my life, and it has. The frequency of things, certain changes. Like, hey, I can't do this as much as I used to anymore. Like, this is fucking up my life, and I need to change those things. And that's a question I need to come up with. And again, this is why I think therapy is such again, the way I try to do it is kind of anti-manipulative. It's just like, you need to figure out what the fuck you're doing. Like, I'm just here to help you out with that, to figure out what you think is the best way to do things. And if you make a decision like, hey, I want to get better at this. Maybe I have a skill that I think might work. And again, I don't know if it's going to work, but you can try it out, and it's worked for other people. So some of we've kind of gone in a circle, but like about the force and like the authoritative aspect of these things, I don't necessarily agree with at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let people do what they want. And if they're not hurting themselves and they're not, making their life shittier and they're hurting other people, I'm pretty libertarian in that sense. Like, do whatever the fuck you want to do. I don't fucking really care. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to leave me alone. Let me do what I want to do. I want you to do what you want to do, as long as it's not fucking hurting yourself.
It just annoys me when stuff gets into hypocrisy and double standards. Because, for instance, I get shit on for smoking cigars. Like, sometimes there's certain periods where I smoke them every day. The last month I haven't smoked anything, and today, before we started talking, I smoked a fat ass fucking cigar because I wanted to, and that's how I know I'm not an addict. I don't have a craving for nicotine. I can go without it for a long time and not buy them.
Wait, hold up. Even if you were an addict, the question is, why are the people upset and giving you shit? That's what's important. Is what, if someone's, so like my wife has sensory stuff, meaning she's like this crazy sense of smell, and like can smell anything, and so it bothered her when I would smoke, and that's a legitimate complaint. Like,
That's true.
I don't want my habit or my thing to interfere with her, and that's a legitimate complaint. So can I do something? Yeah, I can get a vape pen, and I can reduce this, and we can make this work for the two of us. And now you can, again, I've altered my thing to make it work for me. So it's so much. It's not about, even yourself right there. You're starting to like, rationalize, I'm not an addict and all this stuff. Like, who cares? That's not the point. Is this necessarily good or bad for you? And if someone has, I think people are allowed to criticize. Again, that's why I like Mr. Girl.
Of course, yeah.
I
like
that.
You're definitely right. Like, there definitely is a rationalization aspect to it, because, it's like I'm justifying the thing I enjoy doing, and I shouldn't even justify it.
You don't even have, the argument. Again, the argument should only be there is if you're trying to figure it out. If I'm like trying to figure out, like, is this good or bad for me? That's fine. Like, have that argument with yourself, and don't think of it as an argument. Because I don't like debate. So I shit post on chat, but like when I talk to people on VC, like, I don't really want to debate you. I just want to try to understand like where you're coming from. Like, it's just the whole like trying to win in a discussion doesn't make sense to me necessarily.
Yeah, it's stupid. Overall, the concept of like winning a debate is really cringy to me. But yeah, like when it comes to like the whole drug consumption thing, like I think for a lot of people in my surroundings, it's more the idea that it's like more the idea of it, that I would smoke, because like my dad is a smoker. My dad actually like was into really heavy drugs in his life back then, like when he lived in London, and he thankfully got out of that, and now his only vice really is, or his only like things that he like keeps doing is like smoking cigarettes and like drinking sometimes a little bit too much. But for instance, like when it comes to like my smoking behavior, I never smoke indoors. I always smoke on the balcony, or like at the kitchen window, where like I huff it out so it doesn't, it's like, I guess the thing that pisses me off when people like scoff at me is when those people are the people that go out drinking every weekend and get fucking hammered. And then I'm just thinking to myself, so you are better than me, even though you are also
Can I tell you what that is?
maybe abusing drugs, you know?
Okay, can I tell you why people do that? It's gonna be funny. Because being a hypocrite essentially is what you're describing. It's an emotional. It's an emotional control technique. Just like everything else, it's making you feel better about the situation, which is why people do it.
So, an emotional control technique to make you.
It's
basically
again,
the gay pastor thing, right?
It just anything you do in life, very often you can describe it as this is a way to regulate your emotions, and very often the way we behave towards other people is to regulate how we feel. So if we feel vulnerable and we want to protect ourselves, we're going to act in a different way because we're regulating this feeling of being vulnerable and exposed, and so we act in a certain way to make that feeling go away sometimes, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can talk to someone about it and tell them that you feel vulnerable. You don't have to make it go away.
Interesting.
So, deep question now. Am I doing therapy on you? Do you feel like I'm your therapist? I don't feel like I'm doing that.
Not at all. I think we're having a really broad discussion about a lot of fucking things.
Yeah, but if what if we just took a snippet and we kind of have talked about you somewhat, not really personally. I don't think like anything super deep, but I was asking you questions in the very same way that I would be asking questions, or I pointed out that was a rationalization that you did. Was it flashing in my mind that I noticed that, and that to me was not the important question, and it seemed like again to me it seemed like you missed what was important there. That's exactly what I do in therapy. It's just like, oh, someone's asking the wrong question. They didn't notice this, and I noticed this, so I'm going to tell them that I noticed this. And then they're like, oh shit, I had this guy today that like this always happens with this therapy session. He's like toiling over a problem. He's like, I just can't make a decision. It's very clear when I'm talking to him what he wants to do. He just doesn't want to, bite the bullet and make the decision. And I'm like, so I'm just like, could you just do that? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess I could just do it. Because it's it's just the option to do sometimes like you're not even aware that you can do something. It's like like I'm thinking about like I care about my wife, so I don't want to like tell her she looks fat in this dress, but like like I like just you could just do you want to tell her she looks fat in the dress? Like you can do that. That sometimes people don't realize there's options available, and you can do that in a way that's gentle. So you can say like, hey, yeah, you do kind of don't look great in that dress, and I want you to look great. So you can be honest and truthful in these moments and not fuck your life up. So you can act in the way that you actually want to.
This is something that my mom does a lot. Like when she notices that I'm being a maniac, like an irrational maniac, then sometimes she's like, what you're doing is self-destructive. What you're doing is stupid. Don't talk yourself down like that. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. And it's like sometimes like people like, all you need is like a little nudge, or basically just like getting called out sometimes. Like, hey, what you're doing is like weird, or hey, you're overthinking right now. You're being a little bit too insane. You're being too intense right now.
And then what you do right there, what you're kind of when you point something out like that to someone, like you verbalize the feeling, it's actually a therapy technique where you're trying to like detach them a bit from their emotion. It's not that you are this emotion. Now you're telling someone like, hey, you're feeling something. So it's not actually you. You're experiencing an emotion. And it's actually a way to help people get out of these things by just, noticing things. Hey, it looks like you're feeling sad right now. And all of a sudden they're not sad as an entirety. Oh, I'm feeling sad. And that changes how, we interact with the emotion very often. Because it's like the, I'm sure you've been here. Like I've had really fucked up moments in life, and I'm assuming other people have, when you're consumed by like a really sad emotion. So if in loss, you lose someone and like you're just consumed by this thing. And you can't see anything else around it. It's like, you can have, I use this example all the time. So it's like you can get consumed by an emotion, and it happens to me. So I'll be sitting on the couch and like something will happen. My wife and I will be in an argument. That's something that triggers me a lot. And I get in this kind of, somewhat of like a depressive state, and I'm just like so in my head. I'm just like so pissed off and so angry. Sitting next to me. So I'm kind of a Chad, and my wife's really hot, and we have really cute kids. And so I have like the cutest fucking 2-year-old little girl sitting next to me. And she's like laughing and giggling and like, having the best time. And it's like such a wonderful thing. And I just don't even see it. was like, you don't fucking exist to me right now because I'm so in my head. And by just saying to someone of like, hey, like, are you feeling okay? Like, you look like you're feeling sad. It can like takes you out of it a little bit. And that's often, again, the goal in therapy is to teach people skills to take themselves out of the emotion and getting to the point where, as Dr. K talks about this, of like where you can see your emotion. He uses kind of this Eastern meditation stuff, but like you can there's a person that can observe the emotion. You are not like just that, but sometimes it feels like that.
And yeah, I do notice like in my own behavior, for instance, like when it comes to like the really anxious shit, I have intense anxiety with driving, like actually like panic almost, like where it's like I get in the car, or basically someone tells me, okay, can you go do shopping? Like you can take the car. Then I think, the car. Jesus, fuck the car. Oh no. I have to use the car. You know, and then it's basically like this fixation, right? And then I get in the car, and then I get really stressed out. I fucking freak out, right? And I can't force myself to drive. And when I drive, I am attentive. I guess that's a good thing when you're anxious. You're very attentive when you drive.
True.
Because you really don't want to crash. So that's a good thing. But it's too much. Like it's really stressful for me, right? But then I noticed when there was an emergency, or when the focus wasn't on me, when it was on someone else, then I was able to drive. Like without even thinking about it. Just get in the car, drive to the hospital, pick someone up, get back home, you know, that shit. Or my mom feels really bad about whatever kind of thing, and I don't want her to drive in that condition, so I drive her, and then I can do it fine. You know, it's like this weird thing where, like, if I'm by myself, so to speak, you know, and I can only think about myself and me driving, then I get really anxious and I get scared. But then when someone else is in the car, it's not that big of a deal. But then
it might be there.
If there's like a bigger problem though, it's gone. It's gone. I don't think about it. I just do it.
I would say there's maybe two different kind of separate things going on. So the last thing you're kind of talking about is like you're expanding your awareness very often. So like kind of what we're talking about is like, you know, your awareness is 100% units of awareness is focused on your emotion when you're in this like panic in your car by yourself. And then, you know, all right, maybe 95, you're paid like 5 attention paying to the road, but you're mostly in your head. And now when you have someone else in the car, like you can't give it all of your attention. There's someone else talking to you, and you're attending to other things, and you're kind of expanding your awareness. So that's like when in therapy they'll teach you mindfulness exercises, and it's kind of essentially doing that. Is you're practicing widening your awareness in many ways. So you can have this anxious feeling, and you can do this right now. You're just like, you know, start paying attention to the feeling of your feet on the ground. Probably wasn't paying attention to that, but it's there. And then you can, you know, just do random stuff like that, or you can focus on your breath, or you can focus on a sound, or anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And you start training yourself to practice when I'm emotionally overwhelmed. I can start paying attention to just more than just this. And when you tend to do that, you tend to be able to like it's not controlling you as much, and you can make decisions that are in your favor as opposed to just bad decisions. Which, you know, when we're highly emotional, we don't tend to make very good decisions.
Yeah. It's just like a weird thing. And again, like, are you doing therapy right now? Should I play devil's advocate? Are you doing therapy right now?
What I would be doing technically would be psychoeducation, where I'm trying to explain concepts, and it's not towards you necessarily, and we're using you, I think, as an example sometimes. And, you know, your example of being anxious in the car, and could that help you? I mean, yeah, it might. It helps a lot of people when you do mindfulness activities to deal with overwhelming emotions. But is that therapy? You know, did I just give you a prescription? I don't feel like I did. I said, like, hey, here's something that, you know, I didn't even tell you to do it. I said, this is what the concept you made me think of when you were talking about this. Oh, the other thing that I want to talk about, the other concept that came into my head, that so there's two different experiences. When in the car, you kind of described it being less, but it's still kind of there when there's someone in the car, but that when you're like, you know, someone's in the hospital, you don't feel it at all.
Yeah.
So there could be the awareness thing. You know, it could be, you know, so much awareness is now you're worried about the person in the hospital, and so that's taking all of your attention. it could be something like that. I think that's also we're able to overcome certain things when there's like a general like purposefulness and meaningfulness to what we're doing. And so it's like, if you're doing something really important, it's generally, if I think people are able to step up to the plate and deal with things and focus on things. So I wonder if also just the gravity of the moment could in some ways help you do those things. But it could also be that attention thing.
I think the gravity of a moment. I think there were also cases where that was definitely a thing, like where it was absolutely necessary where I needed to drive, and then I took the responsibility, and then I was able to just do it. Actually, yeah, that reminds me when we drove to Italy, and we were in the fucking we were on the how's it called, the freeway,
Yeah, like lots of go
the
you go
motorway,
fast.
whatever. Exactly, you go fast. This is the weird thing. When I was driving to Italy with my parents, we needed to take turns, because if one of us drove all the time, of course we would get exhausted and we would need to like sleep somewhere, whatever, So at that like period, like I was really confident. I was good at driving. I was attentive to the road. I wasn't anxious at all, But then after that period, where, again, like it wasn't absolutely necessary anymore to do this, I chickened out again. Then I was again like really like terrible with like the concept of getting in a car,
Mm-hmm.
It's just really interesting to explore that, and
You know what? You should go to therapy.
maybe I
Like
should.
Mr.
Yeah,
Girl.
maybe I should.
But it is interesting to explore these things and try to understand like, hey, why do I do things this way? And can I, figure this out? And maybe again, the whole goal is to, improve those things. So if like it's fucking super annoying to you that you have to deal with all this anxiety all the time just to get in the car and like go to the store, yeah, that sounds like something that probably doesn't work out too well for you. And like the ways that you've been doing it now aren't working. So a therapist can help you figure out, how to handle and manage those things, which would be great. But
The one thing that helped me when I needed to drive every day to work for a part-time job was I have like a little field recorder, Tascam DR05. I don't know why I said that. I guess I needed to just throw that in there. I mean, I don't know if you know about it. Doesn't matter. Anyways, I have that little field recorder,
Mhm.
and I just put it in the car, turn it on, and I had fucking car diaries, basically. Like every time I would drive, I would talk to myself into a microphone, basically. That is like
That's cool.
propped up in the car. And I was just talking about random fucking shit. So it's always radio off, microphone on, and I just talk about random shit. And I never listen to these again. But they're saved on my computer. I just never listen to them again. It's just random stuff, really uninteresting stuff, but that helped me, so
Yep.
so that
It's what
was
you-
something.
You did a mindfulness exercise without knowing it. That's a literal thing that I would tell someone to do is say your thoughts out loud. It's really helpful to do that.
So that's mindfulness. So
It's one activity that again you're focusing your attention on something else. You're shift. You could call it a therapy technique. It is. It's something that we would teach people to do in therapy. So you can write your thoughts out. It's like journaling. You're just doing it verbally. It's the same concept.
okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it really. I mean, there's probably something different about writing than saying stuff out loud, but it's the same essential concept. Is you're getting your thoughts and your essentially your emotions outside of your body, so you're not so preoccupied with it internally, and it can help. It helps to say things. That's why talking to people is fun. You get to organize your thoughts. You have someone else to be like, "Hey, that doesn't make sense," or they give you an indication that it does make sense, and you can kind of work with that. So, yeah, there's a lot of utility of even doing it with yourself to say it out loud. It's kind of mimics in a sense like hearing it from another person.
That's what I get from like in my experience of writing scripts. Like when I write scripts for videos, whether it be like a video game or a serious subject, I write it down. It seems fine. Then I read it out loud, and then I think that's absolutely stupid. I cannot write this. Then I delete it, write something else, say it out loud, and then I'm like, okay, that's better. Like, you know,
you have to. Like, I feel like every email that I write, or even not my shitposty discords, but if I'm like writing something, like maybe I'm arguing with Mr. Girl in there, yeah, I got to read what I wrote, and you got to make sure that it makes sense, and you got to say it out loud, and you're like, oh, I missed a word, or like sometimes you'll like for me, like I'll run across a sentence, I'm like, what the fuck was I even trying to say here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Or you'll see like, oh, logically, like, oh, this doesn't make sense once I said it out loud. And it, again, I don't think we think about this, and maybe this is a weird idea. But like, what? Again, you have a thought, and the thought doesn't come prepackaged with words. Like, you have to find the words to convey the feeling often to another person, and it's super messy to do that. Like, you're doing the best that you can. And sometimes when you read it back, you're like, no, that actually wasn't what I was trying to convey. That, I tried, but I fucked up, and I need to redo this again. And I don't think we, appreciate how hard that is. So, people get that very wrong very often. Writing it out, saying it out loud can be helpful to you to be like, oh, well, that doesn't make a whole fucking lot of sense now that I said that out loud.
And that's also like what I like about the about the voice chat conversations that we had with all the other random people in Discord, because sometimes there were like these moments where, I would take a position or I would like talk about something, and then other people would be, diligent, probing, and they would be like, okay, I'm gonna challenge you here, I'm gonna challenge you there. And then I noticed more and more, okay, maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, or maybe I do know the facts of a case, but maybe I am changing my mind here, And I think this is the thing that I like so much about like talking to people, because, and this is why I think that the whole idea of winning debates and getting into conversations to win a conversations actually backwards and fucking retarded, because in the end you play gotcha games if you do that, and you basically try to humiliate the other person. You're not actually trying to understand them and learn from them, right?
Yeah,
because
it's helpful.
Because if you admit to a mistake, or you admit that you got something wrong, or you don't have absolute knowledge like God or something, I mean admitting that you're wrong, that's the first step to like getting better, to learn more about yourself or a subject or whatever, and to completely deny that you absolutely have to be right, I think that's a big problem, like, for a lot of people.
I think if you think you're absolutely right almost about anything, you're actually retarded. Like, it's so hard to know things. Like, I was in special education for 10 years, and there's still so much shit that I don't know. And you could ask me a question, and I'm like, I can't confidently answer that question. I don't know. I could give you a general idea, and I think that's what people generally do, is that they give their best estimation. And I really love the basic Socratic method of just and I do this to myself all the time. I'm like, how do I know this? Fuck, I don't know this. I need to look this up. It's just like shit, or I need to talk to someone about it. Like, again, some of the guys, like, no one knows how to pronounce his name. It's his lore, but Svexton is how I say it in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, that dude, he knows a lot of shit. He's super autistic, but he knows a lot of shit. If you listen to him about stuff, it's fucking really crazy.
He knows a lot. One thing I noticed with Swaxon, though, is that he sometimes gets stuck in like a specific, like, for instance, like sometimes he gives people a lot of credit, maybe too much credit. Like, for instance, like I had like a discussion with him about Hassan Piker from Twitch.
Yeah, he's a retard.
I fucking hate that guy. But yeah,
he's like the least. He's the most bad faith in what people mean by bad faith person, like, possible.
Yeah, like, make the rich pay, buys a $3 million house.
And he just doesn't care about anything he's saying.
Yeah. And, like, for instance, like, one thing that he, like, was, like, we were talking about basically, we were basically talking about propaganda, and, basically furthering causes. But my problem was when people further causes, when they A, don't fucking care about them, and B, don't actually know anything about it and
Mhm.
can't actually really further any ideas. And Hassan is exactly that. He's a professional MasterChef watcher and salad eater while fucking, watching random ass videos.
Like an Indian congee, sort of rice porridge. There's so many ways to resolve this, but you have to be clever and creative.
Yeah. Thank you, Chef.
It's all on you guys.
Never, but I've dissected a lamb, biology class, and just gonna go at it like it's science.
Right, next.
2, 3.
It's a pig's head.
It is.
Yeah, this is another thing that would drive me crazy because my profession, when I worked in the schools, as we mentioned earlier, like, I'm around black people all day. So I actually know what their problems are because they tell me. And I hear people talk in like this fucking the racial movement about this is what we need to do to help the black community. I'm like, would always ask this, Mike. I would always like fantasize about saying this face. I'm like, last time you talked to like an actual black person that lives in the ghetto? Hassan Piker. When was the last time? You've talked to the people that actually live in these places and like actually have problems. So how the fuck do you know how to fix their problems? You don't even know what their problems are, and it would drive me crazy. And they would speak again with such certainty, like, if we just tax the rich and give it to the poor. It's like, dog, the shit is way more complicated than that. And like the fact that you think you can implement one solution to a multitude, like a multivariate problem is retarded, and it drives me. It's one of the things I really appreciate about Jordan Peterson. He makes this point all the time. It's like, you don't know when you're intervening. Systems are so complex. You don't know how your intervention is going to fuck with other shit because oftentimes you don't fully understand the issue. So all of these fucking Twitch like armchair activists, it drives me crazy. Like, they have no skin in the game. Like, they don't know these people, so they don't have to deal with the whole defund the police. They don't live in these fucking neighborhoods where it is incredibly violent. They don't have to deal with shootings on a nightly basis. They don't deal with that shit. So like they don't know what these people's problems are, and they also don't have to deal with the consequences of their prescriptions. So these people drive me fucking crazy. I'm like, it's when's the last person you fucking talk to like an actual black person? Because guess what? When we were talking earlier, those white passing black people or whatever, they're too proper. They're different. They have different problems. It's a class issue as well. So there's the problem is so complex, and people make things so simple, and it drives me a bit crazy. And they speak with such certainty. And my standpoint always is, I don't fucking know. I'll give you my estimation and try to be honest about what I do and don't know. But like, stop saying it with such certainty. It is ruining the world right now with fucking social media. It drives me so crazy.
Yeah, and like
the
thing that, for instance, like Swagson was like on about there was, basically, he used a specific term like is something activist, which is an activist that is especially there. The purpose is to rile people up on both sides and talk about it. And basically there was like for him like a term to like describe any person that was retarded and like talked about like their like goals and whatever. And then he said, look, Hassan Piker made a show that is called exactly that term. So that must mean he is this intelligent person that is self-aware, and I mean he made a show with that name, so he must have been aware of what he's doing. And then I'm just thinking to myself, okay, you're steel manning Hassan so much. Like, I think it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, so this is why I love that guy.
He's cool. He's cool.
No, but it's the both, and this is what I love, is that there's so much I can learn from that guy, and he has some very interesting ideas. But like I said, he's super fucking autistic, and some of the shit he says, I'm just like, either I don't even understand what you're talking about. I've said this to his face. I'm like, dude, like, I don't understand you half of the time. Like, I have to spend so much attention with him trying to decipher what he's saying half of the time. But if I do that, he says some really cool shit. But sometimes it's just like, yeah, he says retarded shit, and it's, again, the certainty is what drives me crazy. Actually, I told him today I want to talk to him. He always talks about like hoping like with technology that we're gonna find like lesions on Trump supporters' brains. Like, he's clearly seems to be very left leaning. And I want to talk to him, and I'm like, I just don't see the world that way. Like, how are you so certain that they're wrong about everything? like there's something about Trump that attracted 53 million or however fucking many people to vote for that fucking retard. But like something about him was attractive, and it's not just that they're retarded and have lesions on their brain. Like it's way more complicated than this.
I think if people voted for Hillary, they might also have a few lesions on their brains, by that metric, you know. They were both bad choices.
So in the way it works is that certain states, like it's like, you know, if the majority take it, your vote doesn't mean anything, and they get the electoral college votes. I don't know if you.
Yeah.
I'm assuming everyone knows how the American system works, because we're the best. But
we are forced to know that shit, basically.
But, so in my state, like my vote doesn't matter, honestly. Like it's always going Democrat, no matter what. And so, yeah, fuck you. I voted for Trump because one, it didn't matter, and two, I'm not voting for Hillary either. That bitch is crazy, and in some ways, to me, more terrifying in a way, because she's way more calculated. Trump is a shit poster. He's a fucking retard and has no filter and is an asshole. But Trump's not complicated. Clintons do some shady ass shit that I think is way more dangerous.
Hey, actually he got props by people. Fuck, how is his name again? The guy from Syria, the president. I forgot his name right now.
I don't know.
Assad. Actually, Assad gave Donald Trump props. He basically said that he's happy that basically his enemy is so open about being his enemy, because Trump was straight up like, yeah, let's fuck up the Syrians. You know, let's fund proxy wars. And he's like, oh, thank you. You're being really honest right now. I like that.
So when everyone would say Trump was a liar, and they would always like pick out his misinformation that he did, and it was, he would just talk, but he was talking shit. I don't think he was smart enough to calculatively lie in the way he did. He was just wrong. He was a shit poster on the Mr. Girl chat that was way too confident about what he was saying and just talking shit. And is he lying? Yeah, technically he's not. He's misinforming you about what's going on, but I think he believes half the shit he's saying, and he's also putting on a show, and he's shit posting, and I don't know, like I feel like you knew what you got with Trump, and there was something that I think a lot of people appreciated about that with Hillary. It's like, I don't know what I got. Like, you talk to these banking institutions, they give you lots and lots of money, like talk to them for an hour, they give you like $3 million. That's kind of weird. And then so people, there's so much like mystery around there, and then Trump's just has The Apprentice. Just fucking retard. And I think people appreciated that. But what do I know?
Yeah, I was really fascinated by Trump. I
thought he was the funniest man in the world. I think he is a comedian, and I appreciate his comedic timing.
I bought a book from this guy, and it was like a continuation of like.
Was it funny?
It's so fucking funny. Like, there's so many weird tips in that book about becoming a millionaire. They all fucking suck. But
it's so funny though.
Like he talks in a book about being disgusted when people like shake hands with him. It's like the weirdest shit. But like, you read the weirdest shit, and then it's like, oh yeah, there was this guy, and he said this thing, and then I immediately fired him. Like, it's that kind of shit in the book, right? And you're reading this, and when I read the book, I'm like reading it with Trump's voice, like, and then I went and did this thing. It's like, oh, it's amazing. It's amazing, honestly. Like, he's a weird character, honestly. Like, he's a weird character.
And I get the left disdain for him, because I think you and me are in, we're in a unique little bubble where there are people that actually, like, buy what Trump's saying 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also retarded and scary. And so, like, I understand why the left hates Trump, because he has, controls a bunch of real dumb people and get them to, do January 6th type of shit. It's like, dog, that's just dumb. That's just
like,
dumb
man,
to me as BLM
the fucking Trump is our messiah shit. That's crazy. Some of the scariest shit I've ever seen, man.
Yeah, and I get it. And he definitely, not like he doesn't have, he's not setting boundaries for any man. He wants these people on board.
And like, from his perspective, it makes sense because he's a businessman and he wants populism.
These people like me. Of course. Why am I gonna, slow them down? Like, they like me. They're on my team. Keep going.
Yeah, and he just has no self-awareness at all. It's like, oh, yeah, there was this one moment where like a reporter asked like Donald Trump like, so Donnie T, she didn't say Donnie T, that's my thing. Donnie T, so people say you're like this this beacon of light that destroys or like fights against satanic pedophilic demons, you know. And then Donald Trump is like, oh, I didn't know that, but is that a bad thing? Like, he doesn't even know what they're talking about. Like, he doesn't even know.
But that, see, again, that's witty, that's intelligent. He's like, well, you know, if I'm fighting against pedophile demons, like, is that such a bad thing? But he's missing that, like, he's implying that those pedophile demons are like the Democrats.
Yeah, like
it's so funny though. I think he did that on purpose.
Yeah, like he completely just like that's the thing. I think he's like really bringing his business experience and like shit talking and bullshitting.
He's just shit talking. That's why
he's just shit talking.
I would watch his rallies on Twitch stream, not because I'm this huge Trump fan. It was comedy to me. He's just up there just like riffing and just talking shit, and it's so fucking funny. But I get why he's not good. There's a lot of reasons why, like, I don't really want him to be president, and like that's kind of terrifying. But I gotta admit, guy's funny. All right,
he is really funny.
I gotta go off. This has been very, very enjoyable, but I got work early tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna cut it then here. But yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah. Anytime. This is it's just fun shit to talk about. I'll be in Discord.
Okay, good. Bye.
All right, later, buddy.
Give it up in a second. I'm getting these diamonds, I'm getting these pendants. I'm fucking this bitch and I got in submission. I'm fucking this bitch and she gave me submission. Giving this bitch and I give it myself. Giving this bitch and I don't need no help. Elegante the team, elegante the T. Yeah, we go to the top and it's all that green. Coming little virgins and cherries, I pop them. Give me 10 minutes and pennies, I drop them. Fancy little bracelets, I hang, yeah, I bought them. Won't tell me shit, boy.
And there's this gammy little geezer in a wheelchair, right? Screwing me out. Furious, yeah? Giving me daggers. I lean into him, I go, I hope you have as much fun in there as we just did, you little cunt.